With a single, unhesitating blow, Boros shattered the jade-like shell into which the five-tails Yagura had fully transformed. The sheer force of that strike, delivered head-on, was a level of power once thought attainable only by the mightiest shinobi of old, Senju Hashirama and Uchiha Madara at the height of their prowess. When Black Zetsu reported this astonishing feat to Obito, even his usually unflappable composure faltered. "Senju Hashirama, Uchiha Madara," he whispered, as if uttering their names summoned the weight of history itself. Those two legends were more than mere figures of myth. They were the living gods and fearsome shuras who shaped the ninja world. And now, here was someone, Boros, whose strength rivaled theirs. Obito's eyes widened. He had already been taken aback by Virgil's arrival, but Boros' sudden appearance cut even deeper. The world, he realized, was far more complex and dangerous than he had ever imagined. Obito sat in the low glow of lantern light, the maps before him strewn with markers and annotations. "We need to take a hard look at our opponents and at the balance of power across the entire ninja world," he said, voice steady but urgent. Heijue leaned forward, fingers tracing the borders of the villages on the parchment. "I believed our plan was foolproof," he admitted, "but I never imagined such formidable figures, Virgil and Boros, lying in wait. This isn't just a warning for us. It's a wake-up call for every shinobi clan. Beneath the veneer of peace, dark currents are swelling." Obito's eyes hardened. The emergence of warriors like Virgil and Boros had shattered any illusion that the Akatsuki could expand unchecked. With their current forces, gaining a true foothold in this world was nothing more than a pipe dream. Alliance and strategy had to become their immediate priorities. He tapped a scorched area on the map. Kirigakure may lie in ruins, but its strategic location is too valuable to ignore. We must find a new entry point and reassert control before our enemies tighten the noose. Black Zetsu's soft, serpentine voice came from the shadows. "Agreed." Obito studied their reflections in the polished table, each face marked by resolve. "Very well. Send word to our hidden cells. We move at dawn." As the lanterns flickered low, the three conspirators fell into a tense silence, already plotting the next move in a game whose stakes had never been higher. "Sambi Esoho has been destroyed. What's our next move? Should the Akatsuki dispatch a team to capture its reincarnation?" Black Zetsu asked, concern tinting his voice. Obito leaned back, steepling his fingers. "Not yet. It will only reform close to Kirigakure. The Mist Village will detect and pursue it first. It's far too early for us to make our move." "But Kirigakure no longer wields the strength needed to seal the three tails," Zetsu protested. Obito offered a cold smile. "Precisely. Let them guard the beast for now. When the time comes, when the new Jinchuriki's seal is weakest, we'll strike swiftly and claim the three tails ourselves." He paused, eyes gleaming in the dim light. They'll never relinquish their vigil over the beast until a fresh Jinchuriki is selected and the seal reforged. Once that moment arrives, we won't hesitate. Black Zetsu nodded slowly. "Very well, and our next step?" Obito's grin widened. "We wait and prepare." Ethan's mind raced as he faced the fading silhouette before him. "Should we stick to our original plan," he asked, voice low, "or do we need to adjust our strategy to counter this new threat?" Heijue's dark eyes flickered with resolve. "First and foremost, we must ramp up our intelligence gathering, especially on the individual capable of confronting a tailed beast head-on and killing it. Simultaneously, every agent in the Akatsuki must hone their skills without exception. Whether alone or organized, we cannot afford to slack off. Each member must push beyond their limits. At the same time, begin reaching out to potential allies. Be they motivated by shared interests or mutual enemies, any contact that can serve our purpose is worth exploring. In this fractured world, there are no permanent enemies, only permanent interests. I'll immediately order an expansion of our spy network and initiate discreet communications with those who might aid us. As for Kirigakure Village, we'll keep their every move under close surveillance to ensure nothing escapes our notice." With that, Heijue's form shivered like a mirage. In an instant, he dissolved into the night air, leaving Ethan standing alone, heart pounding, body rooted in place, unable to move. Since that disastrous mission to the Poison Ninja Village, when one careless slip let a potent venom surge through my veins, I've been confined here, bedridden, undergoing a brutal detox. Medical ninjas have been replacing the Baijue toxins in my body one by one, each new dose clashing with the old until dozens of venom sacs were destroyed along with my strength. At last, the worst has passed, but my fear of that place has only deepened. I find myself whispering the same two names over and over: Virgil, Boros. They share a terrifying reputation. Virgil stormed Konoha single-handedly, leaving the Hidden Leaf in ruins, walls splintered, market stalls stripped bare, melons and vegetables sliced in half as though they were nothing more than paper under his blade. Boros, for his part, slew the fourth Mizukage, Yagura, and the Three-Tails Isabu in direct combat, emerging victorious without a scratch. Could they be agents of the same dark power? Unable to train or even stand, I've spent my days turning every fragment of intel over in my head, slowly piecing together the threat they pose. And beyond Kirigakure's gates, rumors of Boros's rampage have already spread like wildfire. Despite our village's efforts to hush the story, spies in every corner of the shinobi world ensured the legend could not be contained. In the village hidden in the mist, Boros had single-handedly slaughtered thousands of shinobi, slain the Mizukage, and then simply walked away. His name reverberated across the ninja world, and yet, in the shadow of Virgil, his victory hardly seemed world-shattering. After all, Virgil was widely acknowledged as the strongest of the 5 great shinobi villages, whereas Kirigakure's glory days had long since passed. If this had been the era of the third Mizukage, when Kirigakure stood at its fiercest, even Konoha would have bristled at the village's reputation for producing ruthless, battle-hardened warriors. But those days were gone. Now, though the Cloud and Rock villages spoke in awed tones of Boros's rampage, they didn't believe he'd turn his wrath on them next. It made more sense to assume Kirigakure bore Boros some old grudge and finally got their revenge. Meanwhile, Konoha found itself under an increasingly vicious campaign. Mysterious blacklight operatives had been slipping into the village, assassinating shinobi families and dumping the bodies in the streets, leaving no doubt in anyone's mind that they intended to frame Konoha. Grudges between the villages, already simmering, threatened to boil over. In the Hokage's chambers, both Shimura Danzo and Hiruzen Sarutobi sat in stunned silence, each struggling to comprehend the sudden surge of violence that now menaced the entire shinobi world. They searched endlessly, but could find no mole in their midst. Who could have guessed that every important member of the Hyuga clan had been replaced by blacklight ninja operatives, and that those operatives had slaughtered the originals to frame the clan itself? With the Byakugan, no one should be able to hide a transformation technique, Orochimaru's disguise jutsu included. Yet, because everyone assumed the Byakugan was infallible, the imposters slipped through Konoha's defenses as easily as fish in water. "What are our next orders?" one blacklight ninja asked their handler, Alex. "Stage a repeat of the Uchiha massacre," Alex replied coldly. "Incite open conflict between the Hyuga and Konoha. Let them destroy one another." Chapter 944, The Seeds of Betrayal. Ethan sat at the head of the long, candlelit table, watching Konoha's senior officials spread ancient scrolls and intercepted letters before them. The discovery was simple, but devastating. Evidence, real or cleverly forged, had emerged suggesting the Hyuga clan was secretly plotting a rebellion against the village. In theory, such treason was impossible. In practice, a single rumor could topple an empire. What better way to destroy the Hyuga than to brand them traitors? Ethan thought. We let this story loose, and Konoha's own people will demand their downfall. Old scandals about the clan had already begun to surface. Townsfolk whispered that, generations ago, Konoha authorities forced the Hyuga to hand over certain members as scapegoats for unspecified crimes. Whether those stories were grounded in fact mattered little. Gossip, after all, thrives on half-truths and exaggeration. Twist the narrative enough, and the villagers will believe anything. Wesker and Alex, 2 operatives from modern America, where investigative journalism is an art form, knew exactly how to stoke the flames. They fed select details to traveling merchants, slipped sensational headlines to newspaper vendors, and let the rumor mill grind non-stop. In hours, sympathy for the Hyuga transformed into righteous indignation. How dare the clan so secretly defy Konoha? They've betrayed us all. Voices that once respected the Hyuga's noble traditions now clamored for justice. Ethan noted the irony. These were ordinary people, farmers, blacksmiths, shopkeepers, whose daily lives differed from the Hyugas in food, clothing, and status. Yet when they believed the clan was being persecuted, they rallied to its defense. Human nature, he reminded himself, was unpredictable but easily manipulated. He closed his notebook. Once Konoha fractures from within, the rest is inevitable, he mused. The Hyuga will bear the brunt of public fury, and no amount of truth will ever undo it. Rising from his seat, Ethan cast one last glance at the flickering candles. The moment had come to let the story loose. Then watch as Konoha demanded the Hyuga's destruction with their own hands. Ethan sat back, weighing the ramifications. If the village believed the Hyuga held the moral high ground, he could ride that wave of sympathy all the way to the Hokage's office. Recent upheavals in Konoha had reopened the old wounds of the Hyuga incident, turning a decades-old controversy into today's hottest topic. Years ago, a tragic misunderstanding had led the village elders to force a Hyuga clan member to take the fall and ultimately to commit suicide in order to preserve peace with the other great powers. Though the sacrifice was meant to protect Konoha as a whole, it left a lingering bitterness among the people. Now, the Black Light Ninjas, armed with the journalism techniques they'd learned from Wesker and Alex, were rewriting history. They portrayed the Hyuga as a long-oppressed family on the verge of rebellion, their grievances finally coming to light. Rumors raced through every shop and marketplace, turning old mistrust into fresh outrage and putting Ethan's ambitions within reach. Even villagers whose lives scarcely intersected with the Hyuga clans found themselves swept up in the growing unrest. As Wesker and Alex's carefully plotted conspiracy took shape, Konoha Village became draped in an invisible haze of suspicion and discord. Their tactics were hidden, their strategy flawless, so much so that this supposed grassroots resistance appeared utterly seamless. Disgruntled ninjas and overlooked clan members were the perfect pawns. Most were fringe operatives, shadows within the village, or relatives whose contributions had gone unrecognized. Wesker and Alex quietly drew them in with secret intelligence, financial incentives, and tantalizing promises of future rank and prestige. Driven by personal ambition, these ninjas began meeting in secret, convinced they were planning a righteous rebellion under the Hyuga banner. What they didn't realize was that they had become little more than pieces in someone else's grand design. Forging the evidence required an extraordinary level of finesse. Wesker and Alex proved unrivaled in their craft. They didn't just manufacture fake records of the Hyuga clan's private councils, they also created a cache of counterfeit letters, each one insidiously declaring that the Hyuga intended to overthrow the Hokage and seize control of Konoha. Under cover of darkness, these forgeries were leaked. Anonymously dispatched reports whispered messages at night, setting rumors ablaze across the village. By evening, dinner table chatter had shifted from idle gossip to urgent speculation. Was the Hyuga clan really plotting a coup? With each retelling, the story grew more elaborate, as baseless details were tacked on, deepening the confusion. Soon, ordinary villagers viewed every Hyuga with wary eyes, and in hushed tones, some even urged Konoha's leadership to take swift action before the alleged plot could unfold. Faced with this sudden swell of distrust, the Hokage's council and Konoha's senior advisors found themselves under an unprecedented strain. In the Hokage's office, Hiruzen Sarutobi sat behind a low desk, buried beneath piles of reports and forged evidence. He frowned, torn between his respect for the Hyuga clan's long-standing loyalty to Konoha and the rising tide of public outrage demanding swift action. Only hours earlier, the village's top leaders had clashed in a tense strategy meeting. One faction pressed for an immediate, comprehensive investigation into the Hyuga, arguing that only by appeasing the people could they restore confidence in the village's justice system. The other urged caution, warned that rushing to judgment might punish innocent shinobi and fracture the very bonds they sought to protect. While Konoha's elders debated, the Black Light Ninja organization quietly put their next move into motion. They realized that mere rumors would never erode Konoha's foundation. To truly break the village's spirit, they needed something far more shocking, a direct strike against Konoha's greatest symbols of unity. Their sights were set on two prime targets, Uzumaki Naruto, the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki, and even the Hokage's own family. Wesker, one of the Blacklight operatives, allowed a cold smile to creep across his face. The Nine-Tails Jinchuriki is one of Konoha's cornerstones, he murmured. If the Hyuga, or anyone, dare attack him, it will be an outright provocation. And that, my friends, is exactly what we intend. Chapter 7. Seeds of Doubt. Alex leaned forward across the low table, his eyes gleaming in the lantern light. The Sarutobi clan is the backbone of Konoha's security, he reminded Ethan. If we can convince the village leadership that Hinata's family is plotting to abduct Asuma or even Konohamaru, we'll shatter the Hyuga's credibility from within. No one will suspect us, only them. Ethan nodded, folding his arms. Once the rumors take root, the council will be paralyzed by mistrust. They'll be too busy pointing fingers to notice who really pulled the strings. That night, under a starless sky, Ethan's blacklight ninjas slipped through Konoha's outer defenses, like shadows come to life. Clad in charcoal gray suits designed to swallow moonlight, they moved without a sound. Only the cold glint of their eyes betrayed their presence. Their mission: penetrate the Hyuga estate, gather crucial intelligence, and leave behind the staged evidence of a botched kidnapping. The Hyuga clan, renowned for their Byakugan lineage and peerless insight, had long been both admired and feared in the village. But their very prestige made them the perfect scapegoat. If any family could be painted as treacherous, it was the one everyone assumed would never betray Konoha. Ethan's operatives would exploit that complacency. At the first watch bell, 2 shinobi scaled the outer wall of the Hyuga compound. One disabled the perimeter alarms, the other slipped inside the courtyard. Their trained instincts guided them silently through bamboo grove, and along the edge of Hinata's private quarters. Every step was calculated, every breath controlled. Within minutes, they'd secured detailed maps of the estate and intercepted correspondence between Hyuga elders, a treasure trove of evidence that could be doctored to implicate them in the planned abduction. With these documents in hand, they melted back into the night, leaving no trace but a few faint footprints in the dew. By dawn, Ethan would have everything he needed to kick off Stage 2, planting fabricated reports, leaking selective details to Konoha's intelligence division, and watching as suspicion spread like wildfire. The Hyuga name would be stained, the Sarutobi clan declared endangered, and Hinata blamed for betrayal. As Ethan melted into the alleyways beyond the compound, he allowed himself a fleeting smile. In the war of shadows, the smallest seeds of doubt could grow into the most devastating storms. And tonight, he had sown a tempest that would sweep through Konoha itself. Ethan, commanding officer of the elite Blacklight ninjas, put his team's legendary substitution technique and their intimate knowledge of Konoha's layout to work. Over the course of weeks, they slipped quietly into both the Ambu ranks and the Hyuga household, assuming the roles of ordinary shinobi or trusted attendants. Through unassuming conversation and close observation, they mapped out every quirk, routine, and gap in their target's defenses. At last, under a moonless sky studded with distant stars, Ethan gave the signal. In a secluded corner of the village, what looked like a simple accident was in fact the culmination of meticulous planning. Posing as Hyuga clan members, several Blacklight agents crept toward the softly lit residence of Sarutobi Konohamaru. As the grandson of the third Hokage, Konohamaru's safety was beyond question, and precisely why Ethan had chosen him as his primary leverage. Silently, they closed in on the estate's side gate. Lantern light flickered against their masks, but none stirred inside. Just as the team reached the threshold, Ethan held up a gloved hand, a single moment to steady every heartbeat. Then, with practiced precision, they breached the gate's lock, slipping into the shadows beyond. Inside, the corridors were deserted. Ethan signaled left, and his squad moved like ghosts, bypassing sleeping guards and disabling alarm seals with soft clicks. By the time the intrusion was discovered, it would be too late. They were already in the heart of the compound, mere steps from their prize, and from the first of many surprises Ethan had in store for Konohamaru and for all of Konoha. Chapter 945, Hostage Konohamaru. The safety of Sarutobi Konohamaru weighed heavily on every soul in Konoha. Tonight's incident had been staged for maximum suspense. As darkness settled over the village, most lanterns went unlit, leaving only the torches carried by patrolling shinobi swinging in the night breeze. Shadows stretched across empty streets, and an unsettling hush settled over every alley. Then, out of the silence, came terrified cries for help, rapid, urgent, echoing from the village's edge, near an abandoned warehouse seldom visited after dark. Those desperate shouts cracked like thunder, jolting every guard and civilian in their path. Within moments, the clash of steel and the roar of ninjutsu shattered the quiet once more. Flickers of flame danced across shattered crates and peeling wood, illuminating the grim determination etched on every face caught in the fray. Yet none of it was real. Hidden in the darkness were the Black Light Ninjas, masters of deception, dressed head to toe in black. With coordinated speed and formidable chakra techniques, they had orchestrated this entire spectacle, intentionally framing the Hyuga clan for the daring kidnapping of Sarutobi Konohamaru, and as confusion reigned and worried whispers rippled through the village, their trap began to close. Everything had been orchestrated by the mysterious Black Light Ninja. They planted just enough evidence to leave the Hyuga clan reeling. The bodies of several branch family members lay scattered, their skulls crushed beyond recognition. To complete the deception, the intruders left falsified confessions, claims that these Hyuga had, in despair, smashed their own heads to keep the village from extracting secrets from their minds. Bang! The sliding door to the Hokage's office slammed open, shattering what little quiet remained. Third Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, jerked away from the telescope he'd been using to spy on the women's bathhouse. His hand snapped shut, cutting off the chakra he'd been channeling. "Danzo, you could at least knock before barging in," he barked. Danzo Shimura strode into the room, cloak swirling behind him. A faint smirk crossed his lips at Sarutobi's ire. Hiruzen scowled. "Where's your basic courtesy?" Danzo's eyes glinted with contempt. "Coming from you, that's rich." Sarutobi's brow shot up. "Oh, and what would you know of courtesy, Danzo?" Silence crackled between them for a heartbeat. Then Danzo leaned over the Hokage's desk, eyes flicking to the scattered reports. "So we're really to believe the Hyuga took their own lives in this manner?" Hiruzen shook his head. "It doesn't add up. The precision of those skull fractures, no ordinary assassin, or even a dozen, could pull this off so neatly. Someone with highly specialized skills set them up to take the fall." Danzo's gaze drifted to the window, where the telescope still rested. "I see you were gathering intelligence?" Hiruzen flushed and waved a hand dismissively. "Let's just say I was making sure our defenses are secure." Danzo allowed himself a brief, rueful chuckle. "Very well, but if the Black Light Ninja truly are responsible, they possess the strength to wipe out an entire branch of the Hyuga. We cannot let the clan's leaders fall into panic or suspicion." Hiruzen leaned back, rubbing his temples. "Agreed. We need solid proof and fast. Send your root operatives out now discreetly. Sweep Konoha's intel network for any sign of past Blacklight Ninja activity. We must uncover who they are and where they've struck before." Danzo gave a curt nod. "Consider it done." As he reached for the door, Hiruzen called out, voice firm, "Danzo, next time knock." From the corridor came Danzo's quiet reply, "Understood, Lord Hokage." When the door clicked shut, Sarutobi settled behind his desk, his expression grave. Before him lay a conspiracy deep enough to threaten not only the Hyuga, but the safety of the entire village hidden in the leaves. He would unravel it, or die trying. "Of course I used the telescope technique to inspect the perimeter of Konoha's barrier," Hiruzen announced, his tone solemn. Danzo rolled his eyes at Hiruzen's self-righteousness. "Save the lectures, Hiruzen. I told you the Hyuga are planning an outright rebellion." He slapped a sheaf of intelligence reports onto the desk. "Read that." Hiruzen sighed, but took the papers. He'd handled plenty of wild rumors, blaming the Cloud and Stone villages for stirring trouble, so he wasn't expecting anything different. Yet as he flipped through the pages, his face tightened. The report detailed a shocking plot. Konohamaru, Sarutobi's only remaining heir, had been kidnapped by the Hyuga branch family and was being held hostage. An Anbu team had stumbled onto the scheme just in time and rescued him. But when Konoha's forces tried to capture the conspirators alive, the branch members chose an extreme course. They took their own lives and destroyed their Byakugan in the process, ensuring no one in Konoha could learn the full scope of their rebellion. Hiruzen pressed the papers back across the table, voice low but fierce. This isn't just an act of defiance, it's a declaration of war. Hiruzen Sarutobi's face darkened the moment he heard the news. He stared at Danzo, his voice tight with disbelief. How can it be? Danzo Shimura didn't flinch. I've verified it myself, Lord Hoge. The Hyuga clan has been secretly conspiring against Konoha. Hiruzen ran a hand through his graying hair. The Hyuga were one of the village's oldest and most respected families, second only to the Uchiha in influence, and still standing after the Uchiha's downfall. If these accusations proved true, it would shatter Konoha's internal unity and hand rival villages an excuse to strike. Are you absolutely certain? Hiruzen asked. Each word seemed to hurt him, as though he were tearing out a piece of his own heart. The evidence is irrefutable, Danzo replied, his dark eyes gleaming with a fierce intensity. He struck his palm once, sharply, on the desk. They've been passing intelligence to our enemies and preparing to turn that betrayal into a full-scale attack. Hiruzen closed his eyes for a moment, steeling himself. Very well, we'll summon the council at once and begin a formal inquiry. But tread carefully, Danzo. The Hyuga still command great power. Any misstep could plunge us into civil war. Danzo's lips curved into a small, satisfied smile. Understood, Lord Hokage. I'll see it through. As Danzo turned and strode from the room, Hiruzen watched him go, his expression troubled. The bonds that had long held Konoha together were fraying, and now, more than ever, the village needed a leader who could hold it fast. We must launch a full investigation into the Hyuga clan, Danzo declared, his voice cold and uncompromising. We can't permit such a threat to fester inside Konoha. Hiruzen Sarutobi remained silent, weighing Danzo's words. He knew how single-minded Danzo could be. Once he set a course, nothing would deter him, yet he also recalled the Hyuga's centuries of loyal service to the village. Rising from his seat, Hiruzen moved to the window and looked up at the night sky, where distant stars shimmered against the darkness. His heart was torn between caution and duty. Danzo, he said finally, turning back with measured calm, we cannot tar the entire Hyuga clan on such limited grounds. We need stronger evidence and a thorough, impartial inquiry. The peace we've built in Konoha wasn't won overnight. I refuse to let a hasty accusation become the spark that destroys it. Danzo's lips twisted into a sneer. Always the cautious old monkey, aren't you, Hiruzen? But mark my words, if the Hyuga truly harbor dangerous ambitions, it will only be a matter of time before disaster strikes. We need to act first and stop this threat before it grows, Danzo insisted, his voice cold. Hiruzen Sarutobi turned on him, eyes sharp. Danzo, I understand your concerns, but I am the Hokage, and you are Konoha's protector, not its executioner. We can't punish an entire clan, one that served this age faithfully for generations, on a whisper of suspicion. The peace and stability of Konoha are worth far more than any personal vendetta. Danzo's lips curled into a disdainful sneer. Do as you wish, monkey, he spat. Just remember, unchecked mercy can become the heaviest chain of all. He strode toward the gate, then paused and looked back over his shoulder. One more thing, about your little telescope technique tonight. I suggest you temper your enthusiasm. The Hokage's reputation still matters. With that parting barb, Danzo vanished into the night. Hiruzen sighed to himself. A Hokage needed moments of respite, after all, and he was only checking on the barrier's integrity. He hurried toward home, worry gnawing at him. His grandson, Konohamaru, lay gravely ill, and time was running out. To drive a deeper wedge between Konoha's leadership and the Hyuga clan, Sarutobi Konohamaru had been brutally maimed, his hands and feet shattered. Fortunately, his injuries stopped short of fatal. It would have been all too implausible to suggest that someone tortured him to death. In the quiet of his office, Hokage Sarutobi Hiruzen frowned as he reviewed the reports. He still couldn't bring himself to believe the Hyuga were plotting open rebellion, and yet the evidence before him was undeniable. The bodies of several branch family members lay in the mortuary, each bearing the clan's official seals. Their identities matched the records exactly. No forgeries, no mistakes, just stark proof that someone wanted to make it look as though the Hyuga had turned against Konoha. Hiruzen leaned back in his chair, mind racing. If the Hyuga weren't behind this, who was? And to what end were they being framed? Chapter 946, Internal Review of the Hyuga Clan. This was a delicate situation. Neither Hokage Sarutobi Hiruzen nor Danzo Shimura had ever imagined that those Anbu operatives would actually be Hyuga agents. Yet with the Anbu's own confession and the body of a branch family member as proof, the case was now indisputable. Deep within Konoha, the Hyuga compound was enveloped in a silence so profound it felt as though even the air itself had frozen. The last rays of the setting sun strained through heavy clouds, casting pale shafts of light across the ancient courtyard, but they did nothing to dispel the turmoil in Hiyashi Hyuga's heart. Standing at the center of the grand hall, clan leader Hiyashi faced the main house elders in a tense semicircle. Some bore expressions of deep apprehension, others of barely concealed hostility. He fixed them with a steely gaze and demanded, "Who sanctioned this operation without my knowledge?" Anger flared in Hiyashi's chest. He already suspected the truth, but he was relieved that the Hokage still trusted the Hyuga clan. Hiruzen Sarutobi himself had delivered Danzo Shimura's intelligence scroll into Hiyashi's hands. After reading its contents, Hiyashi had broken out in a cold sweat, realizing just how close the clan had come to disgrace. Now, with ironclad evidence in hand, the clan's fate would be decided here, in this very hall. Kidnapping Sarutobi Konohamaru and using him as a bargaining chip to blackmail Hokage Hiruzen, is that your plan? How brazen and reckless. Do you honestly believe that if the Uchiha are wiped out, the Hyuga will go unscathed? Even now, at Konoha's most perilous moment in decades, the Hyuga are hardly the ones stirring trouble. The Uchiha have already shown us what happens when a single clan dares to stand against the entire village. Hyuga Hiyashi's voice was icy as he addressed the gathered clan council. Outwardly, he denied any Hyuga involvement, but deep down he knew the truth. Only the main house possessed the authority to command the branch house, thanks to the caged bird sealing technique, which could extinguish a branch member's life at a word. Such power guaranteed absolute obedience. Hiyashi's rage boiled over. How could the main house act without so much as a whisper to their own leader? The Hyuga have been one of Konoha's pillars since time immemorial, he seethed. It is our sacred duty to safeguard the village and preserve its peace. Around him, the council members shifted uncomfortably. No one dared speak up. Hyuga loyalty, once sealed, could not be broken. Yet Hiyashi's words echoed in their minds. If the main house had gone this far, what other secrets were they hiding? How could anyone dare commit such an act of treason? Hyuga Hiyashi's voice trembled with disbelief and sorrow. He knew that if news of this reached the outside world, it would shatter the Hyuga clan's hard-won reputation and send shockwaves of unrest through all of Konoha. Patriarch, we swear we knew nothing of it. Elder Kohana of the main family pleaded, his knees nearly buckling. Fear and innocence flickered in his eyes. He'd clearly been blindsided by this accusation. Hiyashi, you're mistaken. How could the Hyuga main family possibly do something so absurd? Elder Daijiro's tone was hot with anger as he stepped forward. Hiyashi's grip tightened on the scroll in his hand, as if it alone kept him from collapsing under the weight of his grief. Mistaken? Then explain why the bodies of branch family shinobi were found at the scene of the sabotage. Their seals were intact, unforged. Their deaths are irrefutable proof that the main house orchestrated this. Daijiro's face flushed. Those seals can be tampered with. Our blood is the same, main house and branch alike. Do you truly believe we'd slaughter our own kin? Hiyashi's gaze sharpened into a blade. We share a name and a legacy, but when clan secrets are spilled in betrayal, even the closest bonds cannot cover the stain of truth. How dare someone show such blatant disrespect? The council chamber fell into stunned silence as a white-haired elder's voice trembled with outrage. He glanced at Patriarch Hiyashi, desperately invoking the clan's traditions and honor. But his words did little to soothe Hiyashi's fury. Everyone's heartbeat echoed in the hush. At last, another elder stepped forward, his voice calm and measured. My Lord Patriarch, we must proceed with caution. These pieces of evidence certainly implicate the Hyuga branch family, but they do not prove that the main house ordered this, and while the branch's loyalty to the main family has never wavered, loyalty alone cannot shield them from being used or manipulated by others. He offered a respectful bow. On this evidence alone, we cannot condemn the main house. Hiyashi bowed his head in acknowledgement, his anger tempered by reason. You are correct. We cannot point fingers without proof. Nevertheless, I will uncover the truth, clear the Hyuga name, and see that those traitors receive the punishment they deserve. He drew in a slow breath, gathering his resolve as the elders watched in solemn silence. Ethan stood by the tall window, watching the sky darken. He knew that at this critical moment, any rash move could send the Hyuga clan hurtling into an abyss from which there was no return. A swirl of conflicting emotions churned in his chest. He understood the delicate balance between the main and branch houses better than anyone. Yet the evidence was irrefutable. The Ambu operative's confession and the bodies of the branch family all pointed to one intolerable truth. A traitor lurked within the Hyuga clan. Turning away from the fading light, Ethan let his gaze sweep over the gathered elders in the council chamber. His eyes were like twin torches, burning with resolve. As head of the Hyuga, he declared, voice calm but iron strong, I bear the responsibility to uncover this betrayal, to answer to the Leaf Village, and to restore our clan's honor. A heavy silence fell. The elders exchanged uneasy glances, some eyes filled with confusion, others shadowed by dread. To suggest treachery within a clan renowned for its unity was a blow none of them had expected. Now, each man and woman in the room felt the weight of Ethan's words. The hunt for the traitor had begun, and with it, the fragile fate of the Hyuga clan hung in the balance. Hiyashi, we understand your anger and your concern, one of the younger elders began, standing with measured deference. But with the evidence before us, it's far too soon to blame the main house for this outrage. He paused to meet Hiyashi's gaze. The Hyuga have always borne the duty of safeguarding Konoha. We would never bring harm upon the village, and to abduct Ethan, the Hokage's own grandson, would be a stain on our honor beyond redemption. Hiyashi inclined his head, acknowledging the wisdom in those words. Yet he remained wary, knowing all too well that appearances can conceal deeper truths. I'm not accusing anyone without cause, he said deliberately, but this case is remarkably strange. I propose we form a special investigation team immediately, drawing members from both the main and branch families, to leave no stone unturned. A hush fell over the council chamber as the elders exchanged looks. One by one, they nodded in agreement. Now was not the hour for division, but for unity in the face of crisis. An exhaustive inquiry into the Hyuga clan's suspected internal betrayal was launched at once. Clan head Hiyashi Hyuga wasted no time. He activated the family's investigation protocols and ordered each branch family member under suspicion to be questioned in turn. Simultaneously, he reinforced the compound's defenses, doubling guard rotations, sealing off every vulnerable entry point, to guard against any further infiltration by outside forces. Believing that impartiality was critical, Hiyashi decided to take the matter directly to Hokage Sarutobi Hiruzen. He would deliver a full report in person and formally request the assistance of the Ambu to ensure the investigation's fairness and efficiency. Yet as he made his way through the street of Konoha toward the Hokage's office, a weight settled in his chest. This crisis was a crucible for the entire Hyuga clan, and if he failed to manage it precisely, the consequences could shatter everything they had built. Chapter 947. Lord Hiyashi Hyuga's jaw tightened. No matter the cost, he vowed to expose the truth and safeguard the Hyuga clan's honor. In the Hokage Tower, Sarutobi Hiruzen sat ramrod straight, his usually gentle eyes grave with concern. After Hiyashi's detailed report, the room fell silent for a long moment before Hiruzen spoke. Hiyashi, I have complete faith in you and in Hinata's loyalty. This is far too serious to leave unresolved. I'm dispatching my finest Ambu operatives to assist your investigation. You must get to the bottom of this. Thank you, Lord Hokage, Hiyashi replied, relief flooding his features. Hinata bowed deeply beside him, but neither dared to relax just yet. Before they could exchange another word, a black-clad Ambu agent appeared at Hiruzen's side. My lord, there's an urgent matter, he reported, voice tight with urgency. Hiruzen's brows knit together. This was the same Anbu assigned to guard Uzumaki Naruto today. He rose to his feet, every bit the vigilant leader. Explain, he ordered, leaning forward. The agent met his gaze. Whatever news he carried, it was bound to change everything. Ethan was kidnapped by the Hyuga clan. Everyone else was killed except for me. The Anbu operative's voice trembled with urgency as he finished his report. In the Hokage's office atop the tower, Sarutobi Hiruzen's pupils contracted to pinpoints. The echoes of that confession seemed to thicken the very air, pressing down on all who stood there. Hiruzen's brow furrowed. He'd never felt such gravity in his duties. This wasn't just a matter of clan honor. It threatened the very security and stability of Konohakure. In full detail, Hiruzen commanded, voice low and taut, explain exactly how Ethan was taken. The Anbu agent drew a shaky breath, then spoke with as much clarity as he could muster. Hokage-sama, the incident occurred last night. I was assigned to shadow Ethan covertly, as per our usual protocol. Shortly after dusk, a team of ninjas clad in Hyuga family garb slipped into the area around his quarters. Their movements were ghost-like, silent, swift, and perfectly coordinated. Before our perimeter guards could raise the alarm, they were incapacitated. In the blink of an eye, they vanished with Ethan in tow. Hiruzen's expression hardened. The calm, unwavering resolve of the fourth Hokage had given the village strength in the past, and now, more than ever, he would need every ounce of that resolve. He rose from his seat and paced the chamber, mind racing, formulating a plan to rescue Ethan and to hold the Hyuga clan accountable for this atrocity. When the third Hokage, Sarutobi Hiruzen, heard the news, a storm of emotions welled up inside him. He knew the Hyuga clan for their Byakugan and their unmatched taijutsu, but to abduct a Jinchuriki so brazenly and with such cruelty was beyond anything he could have imagined. Hiyashi, Hiruzen said, his voice low and urgent, your family has safeguarded Konoha since its founding. This is no minor incident. You must give me a full account of what happened. He turned his steady gaze on the Hyuga patriarch. Hiyashi Hyuga, normally composed beyond measure, now looked as though the ground had opened beneath him. He bowed deeply and replied with unwavering sincerity, Lord Hokage, the Hyuga clan's loyalty to Konoha shines as plainly as day. We had no part in this outrage. I fear someone has used our name to frame us and to sow discord within the village. Every word Hiyashi spoke rang with the weight of his family's honor. After a moment's reflection, Hiruzen inclined his head. Although relieved by the clan leader's earnest denial, the Hokage knew there was far more to uncover and justice to be done. Ethan forced himself to set aside his lingering doubts. He trusted both Hiyashi and Hinata too much to believe they would lie. Now, more than ever, unity was Konoha's greatest strength. Hiyashi Hyuga, keenly aware of his clan's honor and the heavy responsibility that came with it, refused to let the Hyuga be falsely accused of any part in the disappearance of the nin, Itail's Jinchuriki. He straightened his back and met the Hokage's gaze with unshakable resolve. Lord Hokage, Hiyashi began, his voice steady, the Hyuga clan has guarded Konoha for generations. We would never do anything to harm this village. Please allow me to conduct the investigation personally. Let me clear the Hyuga name. Third Hokage Hiruzen Sarutobi inclined his head, a new confidence shining in his eyes. Hiyashi, I know your loyalty and skill are beyond question. Still, this is a grave matter. We must move carefully. At the same time, I will dispatch the Anbu to carry out a full-scale search to secure every citizen's safety. Hiyashi bowed and left to carry out the order, but Ethan felt a knot tighten in his chest. He knew this crisis threatened more than just one clan's reputation. It put the entire village of Konoha at risk. Ethan raced through the streets of Konoha, every step fueled by urgency. He had to uncover the truth behind the recent scandal, clear the Hyuga clan's name, and, above all, guarantee the safety of Naruto Uzumaki. After all, the fate of the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki was tied directly to this village's stability, and ultimately, to the security of the entire shinobi world. Inside the Hokage Tower, Sarutobi Hiruzen had already convened an emergency council. The chamber was lit only by a few flickering lamps, casting long shadows across the faces of the village's elite Anbu operatives and the clandestine advisor Shimura Danzo. A heavy tension hung in the air. Whispers died almost as soon as they began. We must prepare for the worst, Hiruzen began, his voice low but firm. If Naruto has indeed fallen into enemy hands, the consequences could be catastrophic. They would seek to harness the Nine-Tails' power against us. He let the gravity of that possibility sink in before continuing. Our response must be twofold. First, we strengthen every barrier around the village. No one gets in or out without our say-so. Second, we launch an all-out search for Naruto. and we must be ready if the Nine Tails breaks free of its seals. Silence followed. Danzo's dark eyes narrowed as he processed the Hokage's orders. With a slow, deliberate nod, he signaled his assent, knowing full well that every second wasted could tip the scales between Konoha's survival and its downfall. Despite his long-standing political clashes with Hokage Hiruzen Sarutobi, Danzo Uchiha couldn't deny the gravity of the crisis threatening Konohagakure's very existence. In this life-or-death moment, Hiruzen displayed the responsibility and decisiveness expected of the village's leader. "Hiruzen," Danzo began, forcing a tone of concern, "you're far too lenient. Why not let me lead our shinobi on a full-scale operation through the Hyuga clan's territory?" Beneath his calm facade, Danzo allowed himself a private, almost gleeful thought. This was the perfect opportunity to erode Hiruzen's authority and, if possible, strike at the Hyuga clan. Unknown to everyone else, he had already signaled his root operatives to stand by and intervene when the time was right. Hiruzen's expression turned icy. "No, Danzo, there's no need for that." He paused, eyes narrowing. "Instead, dispatch units at once to reinforce the barrier around the village. Make sure no one slips past our defenses." With that command, Sarutobi Hiruzen set aside personal ties and fully embraced his duty. Every thought and motion from that moment on was focused on safeguarding the village he swore to protect. "Everyone, fall in behind me. We're heading straight to the Hyuga compound." Hiyashi Hyuga sprinted back to the clan estate, only to find the very elders he had trusted standing with the branch families, their expressions cold and unyielding. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded, stepping between them. "Do you still consider me your clan leader?" An elder from the branch houses met his glare without flinching. "Patriarch Hiyashi, have you not been informed of what's transpired?" Hiyashi's heart raced. "What has happened? And more importantly, where is Uzumaki Naruto?" He caught himself. This was a crisis of even greater consequence. "No, I mean, where is the Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails?" The elders exchanged uneasy looks. At last one cleared his throat. "The village has turned on us. Root operatives attacked the main house, kidnapped our clan head, and now they're isolating the Hyuga completely." Chapter 948, Nine Tails Rebellion. The Hyuga elders' accusations struck like a bolt from the blue. Their words rattled Hiyashi Hyuga's composure and sent shockwaves through the entire clan, plunging everyone into chaos and fear. Hiyashi's eyes widened in disbelief as one staggering realization after another tore through his mind. The root, Shimura Danzo's covert Anbu faction, entrusted by Konoha's highest authorities with the darkest missions, had set its sights on the Hyuga. Worse still, they coveted the clan's greatest treasure, the Byakugan. The root, Danzo's secret Anbu unit. Why would they target our clan? Is it truly just the Byakugan they want? Hiyashi's voice trembled with a mix of anger and bewilderment. The Byakugan was the very bloodline limit of the Hyuga, the source of their unrivaled vision and prestige. Yet many branch family shinobi had long been drawn into the root's ranks. Why, then, would this alliance turn so violently against their own people? Around him, the elders exchanged grim, apprehensive glances. Each man searched the other's faces for answers, but found only the weight of unspoken questions. Silence settled over the chamber, thick and suffocating, as the shocking truth sank in. The root's ambition threatened not only the Byakugan, but the very survival of the Hyuga clan. What kind of conspiracy is lurking behind all this? Hiyashi Hyuga muttered under his breath, his tone low, edged with anger, and a trace of helplessness. If the rumors prove true, the Hyuga clan's standing in Konohagakure will be shattered. Worse still, the very power they have guarded for generations could slip into enemy hands. Across the village, Uzumaki Naruto's disappearance has thrown Konoha into chaos, and the Black Light Ninja have seized the opportunity. They knew it would be pure folly to drag Naruto into Hyuga territory. It would only hasten the discovery of their hideout. Instead, they devised a more insidious strategy: consumption. The Black Light Ninja possess the terrifying ability to absorb others' chakra and even their life force to amplify their own strength. As the Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails, Naruto's chakra reserves are virtually limitless, making him an irresistible target. Now, as his life force ebbs away, the seal that binds the Nine Tails is dangerously weakened, threatening to unleash an even greater disaster. However, To everyone's shock, the nine-tailed fox did not vanish when its host, Ethan, perished. Instead, the breaking of its seal granted it unprecedented freedom. A deafening roar tore through the night as the demon finally shed the last of its bindings. In the darkness emerged a colossal shape, its hulking form looming like a jagged mountain. Crimson light burned in its eyes, as though it could see every shred of hypocrisy and hidden malice in the world. With a furious bellow, it unleashed a surge of ancient power that swept across Konohagakure, plunging the village into chaos. Above, the very sky seemed rent in two as the nine tails burst from the void with ear-shattering force. Gale winds spiraled around its massive figure, ripping buildings, trees, and boulders from the earth and hurling them aloft in a scene of apocalyptic devastation. Nine tails, its seal has been broken, came the alarmed cry from below. High atop the Hokage rock, Hiruzen Sarutobi stared in stunned disbelief at the rampaging beast. Worry darkened his features as he realized that the threat he thought vanquished was now more fearsome and unrestrained than ever. Ethan stood atop the hill overlooking Konoha village, every muscle tensed. Ever since Uzumaki Naruto had vanished, he'd feared this moment would come, and now his worst anxieties were materializing. The Nine Tails had awakened, its power tempered by a cunning intelligence that made tonight's onslaught even deadlier than the cataclysm of years past. Suddenly, a thunderous roar ripped through the air. Boom! The ground shook as a colossal explosion ripped through the heart of the village. Streets buckled, houses splintered, trees were uprooted, and Sen sailing through the fiery sky. In an instant, a mushroom cloud billowed overhead, turning the night crimson. Flames licked the horizon, while choking plumes of smoke snaked through Konoha's alleys, trapping its desperate inhabitants in a haze of terror. Villagers ran blindly for shelter, their frantic cries echoing through the streets. Brave shinobi leapt into the fray, summoning jutsu and charging headlong at the Nine Tails, but each strike merely glanced off its armored hide, proving utterly ineffective. The beast's crimson eyes gleamed with malicious intent as it tore through Konoha's defenses, its rage unstoppable. Ethan vaulted down the hill, drawing in a steadying breath. He summoned his chakra and sprinted into the chaos, heart-pounding. He had to protect the people below, especially now that Naruto, the usual anchor restraining the fox's fury, was gone. At the village's center, Hokage Sarutobi Hiruzen watched helplessly. His normally composed features were etched with grief and disbelief as he surveyed the devastation. He clenched his fists so tightly his knuckles went white. "Nine Tails, how could this happen?" he murmured, voice heavy with despair. Ethan skidded to a halt beside him. "Sir, we can't just stand here," he urged. "If we coordinate our jutsu, redirect the villagers." Hiruzen's gaze flicked to Ethan, weighing the young shinobi's resolve. Around them, the land quaked under the Nine Tails' might, and the flame-lit sky bled its ominous glow across the devastation. Yet in that moment of utter despair, a spark of determination glimmered in Hiruzen's eyes. He inclined his head. "You're right. Konoha still has its protectors. Let's show this beast the true strength of our bonds." As they turned to rally the remaining ninja, the roar of the Nine Tails threatened to drown out all hope. But for Ethan, and for every soul in Konoha, this was the battle that would decide their very future. As Hiruzen Sarutobi weighed his next move, the Nine Tails unleashed a deafening roar and struck again with even greater ferocity. Each swipe of its claws and every gust of its breath reduced sturdy buildings to rubble. The villagers' screams echoed through the smoke-choked air, thick with the stench of death. Hiruzen knew he stood no chance against the Nine Tails alone, but he refused to yield. His duty was to protect Konoha, no matter the cost. Raising his voice above the chaos, he called out to every shinobi in the village, "Konoha ninja, hear my command. Whether we live or die, we will defend our home." His words cut through the turmoil, summoning shinobi from every corner. Masked by flames and dust, they assembled behind their Hokage, determination blazing in their eyes. Some formed hand seals, ready to channel their most powerful jutsu. Others readied swords and kunai, prepared to throw themselves against the beast. There was no thought of retreat, only the resolve to hold the line with flesh, blood, and chakra. But the Nine Tails, sensing their resolve, unleashed another cataclysmic surge of power. The Ninetails threw back its massive head and unleashed a torrent of fire so fierce it lit up the night sky. The searing blaze bore straight for the Hokage rock. Caught off guard, the third Hokage, Sarutobi Hiruzen, could only stare in horror as the monument, and the 4 carved faces he'd sworn to protect, was consumed by flame. No! Hiruzen's anguished shout echoed off the mountain, but it was too late. The proud visages of the 1st through 4th Hokages, symbols of Konoha's heritage and its people's devotion, crumbled away under the fiery onslaught. "Get back!" he roared, summoning all his strength. In an instant, the Rui Jingubang in his hand swelled to twice its size, crackling with golden lightning. With a fierce cry, Hiruzen hurled himself at the Ninetails, staff raised high. But the fox was ready. It slipped aside with effortless grace, a cruel gleam in its eyes that seemed to mock human valor. The beast's deep, rumbling growl rumbled across the clearing. "This is not the Ninetails you remember," it snarled, lead, voice low and menacing. "This is vengeance. Konoha," the creature continued, each syllable dripping with hatred. "You will pay." Ethan watched in horror as the tailed beast began to concentrate its chakra into a single blazing sphere, the dreaded tailed beast ball, an attack powerful enough to reduce all of Konoha village to rubble. Chapter 949, Civil Strife. The Hyuga clan reaps the rewards. Sarutobi Hiruzen stood his ground, refusing to retreat in the face of what should have been a killing blow. If he fell back now, Konoha would be lost for certain. He inhaled deeply, drawing every last mote of chakra into himself, steel-minded and prepared to make this a battle to the death. The Blacklight ninjas had not expected such resistance. Their plan was simple: assassinate Uzumaki Naruto without leaving any evidence behind. Instead, they had torn open the very seal that bound the Ninetails. One of them steepled his fingers and murmured, "Interesting, this turned out even better than we'd hoped." With the Kyuubi rampaging through Konoha, the damage would far exceed anything the Hyuga clan could inflict. And in the chaos, they saw yet another opportunity. Eliminate the Hyuga elders, install their own puppets, then use the caged bird's secret technique to enslave the branch families. Once that was done, even the venerable Hyuga would be powerless to oppose them. At that moment, Hyuga Hizu felt his head spin as he watched the Ninetails tear itself free of the seal. No, it couldn't be. That barrier was woven using the Uzumaki clan's ancient sealing art. How had it failed? Among the 5 great shinobi nations, Konoha's seal on its Jinchuriki has long been unrivaled. Never before had it faltered in battle or allowed the tailed beast within to break free. Years ago, only a freak accident, an enemy's clever exploitation of a momentarily weakened seal, had granted the Ninetails even the slightest foothold. The devastation that followed became a warning none would ever forget. Now, once more, the seal has failed, and panic spreads through the village like wildfire. Memories of that dreadful night decades ago have returned in full force, and this time the threat is even more terrifying. The Ninetails, fully aware of its own strength, is unleashing every ounce of its power. Only now does 3rd Hokage Hiruzen Sarutobi finally grasp the true magnitude of the beast he has contained all these years. Konoha lies under a pall of smoke and despair, its rooftops ablaze, the acrid tang of burning wood and earth choking every breath. Dust swirls through shattered streets, punctuated by the thunderous booms of collapsing buildings, each blast a grim echo of death's laughter. The Ninetails moves with arrogant purpose, trampling the village that once humiliated it, its twin eyes like bottomless pits of rage and revenge. Within them dance complex emotions, a seething hatred for Konoha, an insatiable desire for freedom, and a cruel delight in the ruin it brings. Without hesitation, the Ninetails presses its assault, and all of Konoha trembles beneath its wrath. It swung open its massive maw, large enough to swallow a mountain whole, and in a single gulp devoured the tailed beast Jade, its terrifying power consumed instantly. The very air around the beast trembled under the weight of its presence, heavy with suffocating oppression. Across the Ninetails' hide, chakra roiled like molten magma, enveloping every inch of its fur. As that power was compressed to the brink, an unprecedented storm of energy brewed within. Then, at the very peak of its fury, it erupted. From the beast's gaping jaws poured a torrent of searing flame, hot enough to melt steel, driven by shockwaves of raw destruction, hurtling straight for the heart of Konoha. The inferno roared like an enraged fire dragon, devouring everything in its path. Solid walls, crowded streets, within moments. Flames devoured once proud buildings, reducing them to charred rubble. Trees burned like torches, and anyone who hadn't escaped was vaporized in an instant, leaving only dark pools of blood. As the smoke began to clear, Konoha, once a peaceful, thriving ninja village, looked more like a hell on earth. Explosions roared, structures collapsed, and anguished cries wove together into a tragic symphony. Yet amid the chaos, the shinobi of Konoha showed incredible resolve. A weary but unshakable voice cut through the tumult. "Hokage here, Uzun Sarutobi." "Listen up," he commanded. "We must stop the Nine Tails at all costs. Protect the village, protect our families." At his order, veteran and rookie alike surged forward like a tidal wave, driven by one shared goal, defending everything and everyone they held dear. Ethan stood at the edge of the smoldering battlefield as the Nine Tails plunged itself into the heart of Konoha's defenses. All around him, shinobi fought desperately to hold it back. The entire Nara clan wove their shadow imitation technique, their tendrils of darkness wrapping tight around the beast's massive form. Across the field, the Akimichi warriors surged forward in unison, their multi-sized technique swelling their bodies into living barricades of flesh and blood. Their hulking ranks braced each other, refusing to yield even as the Nine Tails' fiery breath scorched the earth beneath their feet. Meanwhile, the Yamanaka contingent formed a protective circle and unleashed the secret mind-body distortion technique. They plunged deep into the creature's consciousness, seeking any chink in its will that might allow them to fracture its rage from within. Then the Kyuubi's roar split the sky. Ethan staggered under the shockwave. The sound was more than a cry of fury. It was a conflagration of hatred, a thunderclap that seemed poised to swallow the world whole. Behind that roar, the Nine Tails' 9 flaming tails lashed out, sweeping across the battlefield like deadly whips, tearing through men and earth alike. Even half its former power, the Nine Tails remained an adversary beyond mortal reckoning. Legend said the complete Nine Tails ranked at the Super Shadow level. Even now, it towered over the defenders of Konoha. With no Uchiha left to call upon, their options were bleak. At the center of the chaos, Hokage Sarutobi Hiruzen directed every possible jutsu, weaving complex seals and issuing orders in the heat of combat. Ethan followed his lead, rushing forward to support the seals with his own chakra, lending what strength he could to the combined effort. Finally, after the Nine Tails had laid waste to 2/3 of the village, the last line of seals snapped into place. A blinding flash of light, a thunderous crash, and the Kyuubi's roar dwindled into a distant echo as it was sealed once more. Ethan fell to one knee, chest heaving. Around him lay battered comrades and shattered homes, but the beast was contained. They had survived. And though their wounds were deep, both in flesh and in spirit, the shinobi of Konoha still stood. "Who will become the next Jinchuriki?" Hiruzen Sarutobi muttered, his expression as dark as storm clouds. He could feel his life's reservoir ebbing away, his final reserves already spent in sealing the Nine Tails. And yet, this crisis was far from over. "Konoha's peace is shattered," he continued, voice tight with urgency. "We must locate Jiraiya at once." Sarutobi knew he couldn't hold the village together much longer. To the north, Kumogakure and Iwagakure watched Konoha with hungry eyes. Within their walls, the aftermath of the Nine Tails' assault still smoldered. Ruined homes, grieving families, and heavy shinobi losses. The village's very future teetered on the brink. At his side, Hyuga Hiyashi stepped forward, bowing deeply. "Hokage-sama, the Hyuga stand with you," he declared. "Our clan has suffered grievously, both main and branch families, but we will not falter. This attack, it reeks of an enemy's long-laid scheme." Hiruzen hesitated. Doubt flickered in his eyes, but there was no time for uncertainty. Unity was Konoha's only hope. "Thank you, Hiyashi," he said, nodding. "Gather your clan. We must all stand as one. The storm coming for Konoha will not wait." As Hiruzen finished, the assembled Hyuga warriors moved swiftly into the courtyard, their determination as clear as the steel of their weapons. Konoha would face the coming war together, or not at all. "Hyuga Hiyashi, as head of the Hyuga clan, I hereby strip you of your title." The Blacklight Ninja's declaration echoed through the great hall, freezing very member of the main and branch families in their tracks. Hyuga Hiyashi felt the blood drain from his hands and feet, his heart growing colder by the second. Beside him, Sarutobi Hiruzen's face contorted with a deeper sorrow. The betrayal wounded him more than Hiyashi himself. The Hyuga clan, Hiruzen whispered, disbelief coloring his tone. Before anyone could recover, Shimura Danzo slipped forward from the shadows. He had deliberately remained out of the initial confrontation to safeguard his own faction's secrets. But now, he stared down the would-be usurpers in the Hyuga ranks. If they truly sought to seize power through treachery, he would be the first to stop them. Chapter 950, The Hyuga Clan's Aspiring Hokage. Danzo's lips curled into a cold sneer. Humph. I never should have meddled in the Hinata family's affairs, he muttered under his breath, though his gaze burned straight through the assembled Hyuga elders. Still, at a moment like this, any hint of division in Konoha cannot be tolerated. Head of the Hyuga clan, you've served this village a long time. You know better than anyone that Konoha faces darker days ahead. What we need now is unity, not succumbing to internal strife. He swept his arm in a smooth arc, and silently, several root operatives materialized behind him, forming a tense line against the Hyuga guard. The air between the two sides crackled so fiercely it felt as if the slightest provocation might ignite outright battle. Danzo's voice dropped to a harsh whisper. You claim to be Konoha's protectors, yet you choose this very hour to quarrel among yourselves. It's truly disheartening. Our village has weathered every storm through solidarity and sacrifice. The Ninetales rampage only just ended. While the people still reel from its devastation, you would squander your strength on an internecine feud. From his place to the side, Third Hokage Hiruzen Sarutobi exhaled, a faint relief softening the lines of his face. Perhaps, he thought, Danzo's decisive intervention would be precisely what the Hyuga and the entire village needed to pull back from the brink. Ethan studied Danzo from across the war room table, fully aware that, ruthless as he could be, Danzo nonetheless possessed a clear-eyed sense of justice. Rising to his feet, Ethan met the stony gazes of the assembled shinobi. We'll deal with the Hyuga clan's grievances after this meeting, he announced in a calm, authoritative tone. Right now, our immediate priority is countering the next threat. Kumo and Iwagakure are already on the move. We must bolster Konoha's defenses at once, recruit fresh soldiers, and begin rebuilding our strength. A hush fell over the room. Then a senior Hyuga retainer inclined his head. The Hyuga clan will follow your orders. No one could deny the Hyuga's power. Despite Konoha's devastation in the Ninetales attack, they remained the village's greatest fighting force. Privately, many believed it was high time the clan's loyalty was rewarded. Konoha owes the Hyuga a great debt, one elder murmured to his neighbor. Now is the moment to settle that score. Yet none dared speak such thoughts aloud. The memory of Hisashi Hyuga, clan leader Hiyashi's younger brother, still cut deep. Hisashi had accepted full responsibility for the Kyuubi's rampage, offering himself as scapegoat and paying with his life. In the aftermath of the Uchiha's destruction, the Hyuga had learned to mask their anger for fear of drawing the same fatal scrutiny. Ethan scanned the room. I know tensions run high, he acknowledged, but unity is our strongest weapon. We protect Konoha together, or we fall apart. With those words, he took his seat. Outside, dark clouds gathered over the village gates. The next battle was already on the horizon, and every clan's true colors would soon be revealed. A tense silence fell over the great hall as the speaker's voice rang out. Blacklight ninja imposters have already infiltrated the Hyuga clan. They've replaced living members and now hold the entire clan at their mercy, using this old fabricated grievance as a pretext for their scheme. A ripple of murmurs swept the room. Many recalled all too well the tragic fate of Hyuga Hisashi, who, to preserve Konoha's peace, accepted false charges against him and ultimately took his own life. His sacrifice remained an open wound, an indelible sorrow for every Hyuga. Danzo Shimura slammed his fist on the table. So you're telling us the Hyuga are planning a rebellion? Hiruzen Sarutobi, the third Hokage, looked drawn and worried. Dark circles framed his eyes. His trembling hands betrayed the weight of the night's anxieties. He had just battled the Ninetales in a desperate struggle, yet this new threat felt even more perilous. To make matters worse, the ancient rivalries with Union Village and Yanyan Village were stirring once more, both poised to exploit any sign of Konoha's weakness. Konoha has never forgotten the Hyuga's sacrifices and service, Hiruzen said at last, his voice hoarse but resolute. They are our clan, our comrades, and we will not abandon them to these impostors. The tension in the meeting hall hung heavy when Hiruzen Sarutobi rose to speak again. He met the gaze of every Hyuga elder in turn before continuing, his voice calm but insistent. Today's crisis calls for all our wisdom and all our strength, not for vengeance or petty rivalries, he said. I know the village still bears the shame of what happened to Hyuga Hisashi, but those old wounds should not drive us apart. They must bind us together. We must look forward, not linger in the pain of the past. A hard silence followed. Then one of the clan elders stood and spoke with cool authority. Words are well and good, he said, but Konoha needs a strong leader now more than ever. I propose that the next Hokage come from the Hyuga clan. Hisashi Hyuga froze. Stripped of his title and honor after the Nine Tails attack, and with every clan member's support behind this motion, he had never felt so unworthy. Yet the elder's announcement passed without dissent. Even as memories of those lost in the Kyuubi's rampage flickered through his mind, Hisashi saw the conviction in his surviving clansmen's eyes. They believed in this choice. Across the room, Danzo Shimura sat grim-faced, his pale complexion betraying his shock. The decision was unanimous, and it would change the future of Konoha forever. I understand the Hyuga clan's concerns, Shimura Danzo began, his voice sharp and authoritative, but the office of Hokage determines Konoha's future and stability. It isn't a matter for childish ambition. His words cut through the tension like a honed blade. No matter how powerful your clan may be, pressing for the Hokage title out of self-interest will only drive Konoha toward division. What we need now is unity, not infighting. Danzo straightened, pointing an accusing finger. Have you ever stopped to consider what might happen if a Hyuga assumed the Hokage's duties? The inevitable clash between clan loyalty and leadership responsibilities would plunge our village into even deeper chaos. Before he could press his argument further, a calm voice rose from the Hyuga representatives. When did Hinata's leadership ever lead Konoha to ruin? The newcomer challenged. If you truly believe she's a danger, then we will withdraw our claim today and never stand in the way of Konoha's greater good. At those words, the assembly fell silent. The village still bore fresh scars from the Nine Tails assault, and every major ninja clan had suffered grievous losses. In that fragile moment, neither side could ignore the urgency of rebuilding and the pressing need for harmony. If the Hyuga clan truly withdraws, Hiruzen Sarutobi began, pacing before the council table, Konoha simply won't have the time or strength to rebuild itself. With only 2 of the 3 great clans remaining, can our shinobi hope to stand against the ambitious forces of Union Village and Yanyin Village? He locked eyes with Shimura Danzo, who had been about to speak. Hiruzen raised a hand. Danzo, I know you have your reservations, but we must confront reality. Danzo bristled, but remained silent as Hiruzen continued. We're only just recovering from the Nine Tails uprising. Our resources are stretched thin, our people weary. Now, more than ever, we must unite. The Hyuga are not merely one of Konoha's strongest clans. Their loyalty or defection will decide our survival. If we cannot extend to them the respect and trust they've earned, losing them would be a catastrophe. Hiruzen paused, the room falling into a heavy hush. His gaze grew distant, thoughtful, and regarding the question of the next Hokage, that decision demands even greater care. He let his words linger, aware that the fate of Konoha and the fragile ace between the villages hung in the balance. I believe a true Hokage isn't defined by birthright, but by the willingness to put Konoha's welfare above all else and guide the village toward a brighter future. If a member of the Hyuga clan is capable of fulfilling that duty, then I will gladly step down and let them take the mantle. Hiruzen's words hit Danzo Shimura like a bolt of lightning, leaving him visibly unsettled. Chapter 951, Konoha's Control Plan. Monkey, what are you talking about? There's no way the Hokage can come from the Hyuga clan. Danzo Shimura snarled, his voice laced with disbelief. Hiruzen Sarutobi met Danzo's glare with calm resolve. Danzo, believe me when I say this, the next Hokage will indeed be a member of the Hyuga. In his heart, Hiruzen understood how improbable it sounded, Never in Konoha's history had a great clan offered one of its own to the village leadership. If the Hyuga seceded, Kirigakure would have treated them as cautionary prey, hunting clan members for their prized Byakugan. Yet the village simply couldn't afford to lose its greatest, in fact, its only line of defense against such threats. And the Hyuga themselves stood to lose everything by leaving. Exile, exploitation, even the brutal removal of their eyes once they showed weakness. Breaking the Hyuga's bond with Konoha would spark internecine strife, plunging the village into chaos from which neither Kumogakure nor Iwagakure would hesitate to capitalize. Faced with the prospect of civil war and the real possibility of annihilation, Hiruzen made his decision. They would compromise. Across the council chamber, Hyuga leaders exchanged startled looks. Was it possible that the next Hokage could truly emerge from their ranks? For the first time in living memory, the clan allowed itself to hope, and so did Konoha. The Hyuga clan's plan to massacre the branch family had collapsed, but in its place, they'd managed to thrust one of their own into the Hokage's seat. Even so, they understood that claiming the title didn't guarantee total control over Konoha. The office of Hokage carried immense moral authority, but it wasn't a license for absolute rule. Hinata and Hanabi exchanged bewildered glances, struggling to reconcile the outcome with everything they'd believed. Hiyashi Hyuga's voice cut through the stunned quiet. "We'll give you exactly 1 day," he declared. "By tomorrow, we will announce the Hyuga clan's Hokage." Still flush with defiance, the elders refused to back down. Their goal was clear: compel third Hokage Sarutobi Hiruzen to step aside. Sarutobi's face darkened with concern, but he could not refuse outright. "Very well," he murmured, though each word seemed to taste of defeat. He knew their pledge could be broken as easily as it was made. In the shadows of the council chamber, Danzo Shimura pressed his fingers to his lips, furious and wounded. He'd spent years scheming for the fifth Hokage's seat, only to be passed over yet again. The village lay half destroyed, its streets still choked with rubble, and already tomorrow's declaration loomed on the horizon. Even though the Fire Daimyo's approval was required by tradition, the decision had effectively been made. Any formal objection would be as futile as shouting at the wind. That night, Ethan sat alone in the dim glow of his lantern, rereading the scroll's final lines. His heart pounded. The Hyuga coup was entering its last phase, and Konoha's future trembled on the edge of an uncertain dawn. Under the pale light of the moon, Ethan studied Wesker with a wry smile. "So you really intend to become Hokage already?" he asked. "Your grand strategy has always been to strengthen the Poison Ninja Village, use it to conquer the ninja world and uncover its hidden secrets. But your first step now is even more audacious. Seize control of Konoha, the world's strongest village." Wesker's eyes lit up at the challenge. "That's precisely my plan," he replied, folding his arms. "Instead of an outright assault, we'll embed ourselves within Konoha as a specialized ninja clan. War is on the horizon. This is our chance to prove our worth. They'll welcome powerful allies, and once we've earned their trust, we can steer Konoha's destiny from the inside." Ethan nodded, tapping his fingers thoughtfully. "It could work, but we must conceal our true origins. If the Leaf Village ever learns we're linked to the Poison Ninja Village, every benefit vanishes. We need an airtight cover." A confident grin spread across Wesker's face. "I've already devised our disguise. We'll serve Konoha loyally, make vital contributions in the coming conflict, and when the time is right, we'll reveal our true allegiance. We'll control Konoha faster and more thoroughly than any external conquest." Ethan's expression grew steely. "Very well. Let's put this plan into motion. But remember, if we slip even once, the entire operation collapses." Wesker's grin only deepened. "Don't worry, I've thought of everything." And with that, the two conspirators set their scheme into motion, ready to infiltrate the strongest ninja village under the guise of newfound heroes. On the second day in Konoha, just as the village was beginning its reconstruction, Hokage Hiruzen Sarutobi convened all the Jonin. In Konoha, Jonin are not only the elite fighting force, but also the council responsible for choosing the next Hokage. Only those personally promoted by the Hokage may hold true Jonin rank. Any shinobi elevated otherwise can at best earn the title of Special Jonin, which carries no voting rights. To confirm a new Hokage, a a candidate must win a vote of confidence from a majority of the Jonin. Unbeknownst to many, the Hyuga clan had quietly secured support from every Jonin outside the Sarutobi and Hokage families. When Hiruzen opened the vote, the outcome was decided almost before the ballots were cast. Their chosen nominee, young Hyuga Kagami, secured the majority and was declared the new Hokage. Though Kagami's youth raised eyebrows, he already possessed Jonin-level prowess. Crucially, the clan had even implanted a covert black-light shinobi to ensure his smooth ascent, tipping the balance in his favor. The day Hyuga Kagami took office as the new Hokage, the third Hokage, Sarutobi Hiruzen, personally came to congratulate him. On paper, Kagami was only a Jonin, far from an S-rank ninja, but he commanded the full backing of the Hyuga clan. In the wake of the Fourth Great Ninja War, Konoha desperately needed that kind of support. As soon as Kagami assumed the mantle, he dismantled the old Hokage department's Black Ops division, the Root. No longer would its clandestine assassins and intelligence officers operate in the shadows. To many, this was a long-overdue reform. For Shimura Danzo, however, it was an unthinkable betrayal. The Root had been his greatest source of power, the hidden hand that shaped Konoha's security for decades. Yet even before Kagami's decree, murmurs of discontent had begun to spread through the village. Families whose talented children had vanished into the Root, never to be seen again, had stewed in silent anger. They had longed for the day when those gifted ninjas would return to them. Now, with the Hyuga clan firmly at his side and the people stirring with hope, Kagami's proclamation gave voice to their frustration. Root's captive prodigies were to be freed immediately. Cornered, Danzo had no choice but to release the Root's operatives. Still, he met the order with a thin smile. He believed his agents, even freed, would remain loyal to him alone. But under the watchful eyes of Hokage Kagami and the Hyuga leadership, there would be nowhere left to hide. The hidden root of Konoha's shadowy past was finally being uprooted, and its overseer, Danzo, was learning that no secret, no matter how deeply buried, could survive in the light. Hyuga Kagami's latest stratagem was nothing short of extraordinary. He secretly dispatched sealing specialists to erase the memories of every Root shinobi and lift the infamous cursed tongue technique from their mouths. In effect, he had uprooted Danzo Shimura's entire clandestine network. At the same time, Hiruzen Sarutobi's Anbu division was dissolved and rebuilt almost entirely with Hyuga clan members and their allies. Word spread quickly through Konoha's corridors of power. Hyuga Kagami is dismantling everything we've built. Danzo stormed into the third Hokage's private chambers. Hiruzen, now frail and nearing the end of his life, regarded Danzo with gentle resignation. "We are but remnants of an older era, Danzo," he said softly. "If the Hyuga clan's actions serve to strengthen the village, I have little quarrel with them." Danzo's frustration boiled over. "They're consolidating the title of Hokage for themselves, seizing control from under us." Hiruzen sighed. "It may well be their intention to secure the office, but who are we to stand in the way of progress?" Still, he paused, his voice growing solemn. "If ever they threaten the village or the integrity of the Hokage's office, we will find ourselves powerless to oppose them." Danzo bowed his head in grim agreement, realizing that the shifting tides of power were beyond even the third Hokage's command. Ethan sat quietly as the third Hokage, Sarutobi Hiruzen, addressed the gathered shinobi. "Of course," Hiruzen began, folding his hands, "the core issue is that Danzo has been completely severed from Root. His memories remain sealed, and his family has him under strict guard. He has no way to re-establish his old network. And once the tongue eradication seal is fully lifted, Root will vanish from history. There's no way Danzo would ever accept that. And that's before we even factor in Jiraiya and Tsunade." Chapter 952, The Wesker Clan and the Black Light Clan. Shimura Danzo paced the length of his office, his brow furrowed in frustration. "What good will Jiraiya and Tsunade do?" he muttered, unable to disguise the anxiety in his voice. He knew full well the talents of the legendary Sannin, but could they act fast enough? Hyuga Kagami was young, yet already demonstrating astonishing growth. Every day, Kagami's influence in Konoha strengthened, and with it, Danzo felt his own power slipping away. As leader of Root, Danzo had devoted his life to protecting the village's shadows. Now time itself seemed his enemy. He still remembered the day Hiruzen Sarutobi agreed to stand back, pledging only to ensure Konoha's prosperity before his final years ran out. Sarutobi had no desire for another feud with the Hyuga clan, and so the old Hokage remained silent while Kagami's star rose. Danzo closed his eyes, swallowing the bitter truth. He lacked the means to undermine Kagami's growing authority, let alone halt the sweeping reforms reshaping Konoha. A cold knot tightened in his stomach. If he hesitated any longer, it might already be too late. At that precise moment, Konoha's gates opened. Two unexpected delegations, one bearing the black and silver crest of the Wesker clan, the other the haunting emblem of the Black Light clan, stepped into the village. Their arrival promised to tip the delicate balance of power in ways no one could yet predict. The morning sun filtered through the Torii Gate as two delegations stood before Konoha's gates. On the left was the Wesker clan, led by Chief Wesker himself. On the right, the Black Light clan under Chief Alex. At first glance, the Wesker ninja appeared unremarkable. Ordinary uniforms, standard armaments, but their chakra reserves ran far deeper than those of typical shinobi. Unbeknownst to most, they'd each been infected and altered by the T and G viruses. That mutation hadn't granted them new jutsu or monstrous powers. Rather, it simply amplified their innate chakra to extraordinary levels, hinting at a virtually limitless potential. By contrast, the Black Light clan exhibited a far more visible, or at least spectacular, bloodline ability. With a thought, their hands reshaped themselves into lethal weapons, razor-sharp blades, formidable claws, or even massive hammer-like fists. Watching Alex's warriors shift seamlessly between forms left onlookers in no doubt of their deadly precision. At that moment, the fifth Hokage, Hyuga Kagami, emerged from the ancestral hall. He wore the resplendent white robe of his office and the distinctive hat of Hokage, its flaps embroidered with the Hyuga crest. Behind him stood the main branch of the Hyuga clan, their posture rigid with the gravity of the ceremony. Kagami stepped forward, clasped Wesker's gauntlet with one hand and Alex's forearm with the other. As their gazes met in silent accord, a shared understanding passed among the three leaders. "Welcome to Konoha, Chief Wesker." "Welcome, Chief Alex," Hinata Jing said softly, but firmly, her voice carrying the weight of both greeting and promise. "Your arrival at this pivotal moment is nothing short of a blessing for Konoha," Hinata Jing proclaimed as she escorted the two visiting clan leaders into the partially rebuilt village square. Crumbling walls and scattered rubble served as a stark reminder of the trials Konoha had endured and the unity it now urgently needed. Standing on a raised platform, Hinata lifted her chin and addressed the gathered villagers with unwavering resolve. "Today, I am honored to welcome the Wesker clan and the Black Light clan into the heart of Konoha. Their strength and loyalty will open new paths for us as we face the challenges ahead. United, there is nothing that can halt Konoha's rise." Her words echoed across the square. Instantly, the crowd erupted in thunderous applause and joyous cheers. To the villagers, this alliance was more than a merger of ninja families. It was a beacon of hope lighting the way forward. Hidden in the shadows, Shimura Danzo watched the celebration with a troubled expression. The Hyuga clan's latest move had undoubtedly fortified Konoha's defenses, but it also chipped away at his own sphere of influence. He reminded himself that this was not the moment for open confrontation with Hinata Jing. Not yet. Ethan knew that Konoha's true need wasn't endless infighting, but stability and steady growth. So he swallowed his resentment and anger, keeping them buried in the depths of his heart while quietly sketching out a new strategy. As long as the village continued to move forward, he believed his chance would come. The chance to reclaim his voice and see his ambitions through. Meanwhile, the other clans grew increasingly puzzled by the shifting balance of power. In a dimly lit study lined with towering shelves of scrolls and tomes, Nara Shikaku, head of the Nara clan, sat hunched over a centuries-old manuscript. The tranquil green of Konoha's gardens outside the window stood in stark contrast to the heavy tension cloaking the room. Shikaku gently turned the brittle pages of his family's secret records, each one a testament to the Nara clan's mastery of intelligence gathering and patient strategy. Yet nowhere among these treasured archives did he find mention of the mysterious Wesker clan or the shadowy Black Light clan. He paused, brow furrowed in deep concern. The Wesker clan, the Black Light clan. How have I never heard of them before? A low, uncertain silence settled over the study as Shikaku leaned back, the weight of the unknown pressing down on him. As a clan celebrated for their strategic cunning, the Nara prized their intelligence network above all else. So when two previously unknown shinobi families suddenly surfaced, absent even from the clan's own archives, it set off alarm bells. The Hyuga explanation, however, proved surprisingly plausible. They claimed these clans dated back to the Warring States period, but unlike the Hyuga, who had allied themselves with Konoha, they'd chosen to vanish into obscurity. In a world as vast as the shinobis, any group bent on disappearing could slip beneath the radar indefinitely. Only because Konoha now teetered on the brink of annihilation had the Hyuga extended an invitation, and only through the Hyuga's favor had these hidden clans agreed to emerge. Ethan weighed their words carefully. On the surface, the account felt coherent. Its deliberate vagueness left just enough room to accommodate every unlikely twist. He couldn't pinpoint a single flaw. Ethan stood in silence, brow furrowed, unable to reconcile what he'd just learned, that the Whisk and Black Light clans had never truly existed before now. He rose from his seat and crossed the room to the tall bookcase, where he drew out a single dust-coated scroll. It was an ancient chronicle, detailing the rise and fall of Konoha's great ninja families. Nara Shikaku watched as Ethan carefully unrolled the brittle parchment and began to search its yellowed pages. He flipped through record after record, hunting for any vague reference to these two newly arrived houses. But the more he read, the deeper his confusion grew. Not a fragment, not a footnote, nothing linked the Whisk or Black Light clans to Konoha's past. Ethan closed his eyes. Had the Hyuga offered the truth when they claimed these clans appeared only to save the village, or was there a darker plot unfolding beneath the surface? Word of the clan's sudden alliance had already reached Sarutobi Hiruzen's ears. The third Hokage suspected, and Ethan could see why, that the Hyuga were asserting their influence. With the Whisk and Black Light clans by their side, the Hyuga would command enough power to rival any hidden village. Had their vow to depart or die if denied the title of Hokage been a bluff, or was this alliance their real bargaining chip? As the scroll slipped from his fingers, Ethan realized there were far more questions than answers, and that Konoha's future had never looked more uncertain. Their power could very well rival that of the 5 great ninja villages. "Chief, what do we do now?" Ni of the senior Sarutobi advisors asked, his voice taut with tension. All around the council chamber, the venerable members of the Sarutobi clan exchanged worried glances. Fear of the uncertain future shone in their eyes, even as they steeled themselves against the thought of losing their hard-won influence. Chapter 953, Dividing Konoha's Big Prize. At first, the Sarutobi believed they still held the upper hand. If the Hyuga clan didn't intend their scion to be the final Hokage, surely they would rally all of Konoha's shinobi to defend the village. After all, one clan alone could not hope to stand against both the Hidden Cloud and Hidden Rock villages. A single family fighting 2 entire ninja nations was unthinkable. Refusing to wait passively for defeat, the Sarutobi reached out to their closest allies. They enlisted the 2 Hokage advisor families, Mitomonin Un and Utatane Koharu, and secured the support of the Yamanaka, Nara, and Akimichi clans, each of which held equally pivotal roles within the village. Summoned to the Sarutobi estate's war room, these houses pooled their resources and influence in a single purpose: to check the Hyuga's rise to power. Their conclusion was clear. If the Hyuga clan insisted on claiming the Hokage's mantle, every household in Konoha must unite to repel external threats. At the heart of that coalition would stand the Sarutobi and their allied families, guardians of the village's future and the only bulwark capable of dividing Konoha's big prize before it slipped entirely from their grasp. Their demands were simple: keep their current holdings intact and spare Konoha from destruction. Yet by making even those modest requests, they'd pinpointed the Hyuga clan's greatest weakness, and they commanded Konoha's largest military force. What nobody saw coming was Hyuga Jing's response. He refused to negotiate. He made no secret deals or political alliances. Instead, he summoned reinforcements from beyond the village walls, the Wesker clan and the Black Light clan. His decision struck Konoha like a thunderclap, triggering instant uproar. On paper, the Wesker clan numbered fewer than 1,000, but they were far from ordinary shinobi. Each member possessed chakra reserves well above average, capable of turning a single fighter into a battlefield linchpin. Their ranks included 10 jonin, 100 chunin, and more than 300 janin. The rest were elders, the infirm, women, and children. Even so, because of their clan's exceptional chakra, the Wesker ninja could unleash combat power equivalent to twice that of an equal number of standard shinobi. As rumors of these new alliances spread, the entire village braced for the upheaval to come. The Black Light clan possesses a rare Kekkei Genkai called the Ghost Hand, which allows its members to transform both hands into any weapon they choose. In an instant, a ninja of this clan can manifest razor-sharp blades, lethal claws, a crushing hammer, a whip-like fist, or even an impenetrable shield, and switch seamlessly from one form to another. In close-quarters combat, this ability gives them an overwhelming advantage, enabling them to strike their foes with devastating force. Since their enrollment, Konoha's defenses have grown markedly stronger, and its overall combat effectiveness has taken a quantum leap. Numbering in the hundreds, these shinobi not only wield exclusive ninjutsu, but also outmatch virtually any opponent in lethality. By allying with Konoha, the two great clans have finally closed the gap in the village's fighting power. Hinata Jing's bold move not only boosted Konoha's strength across the board, but also announced his determination and courage for all to see. Wesker and Alex understand that to truly seize control of Konoha, they must first shatter its existing power structures. Dismantling the old constraints and introducing new players are essential steps, and that's exactly why the Wesker clan has forged an alliance with the Black Light family. Yet change never comes easily. Although this partnership brings fresh strength and opportunity, it also upends Konoha's established balance of interests. One by one, time-honored institutions are being challenged, and the resulting upheaval has sparked unrest across the village. Several prominent clans, the Sarutobi, Midamon, Utatane, Shimura, and the Inoshikacho trio, have all voiced edge-sharp objections to Hyuga Kagami's decision. They fear that welcoming these outsiders will fracture Konoha's unity and even jeopardize their own standing within the village. As tensions rise, everyone is left wondering what the future holds for a Konoha in turmoil. In Konoha's eyes, the village's cake of resources was already too small, and now two formidable outsiders had arrived, threatening to shrink everyone's share even further. Worse still, these newcomers weren't harmless pawns but dragons crossing the river in full force. Discontent spread through Konoha like wildfire. Prominent clans and power brokers openly demanded answers, while others quietly plotted to curb Ethan's influence. They accused Ethan of making sweeping decisions without so much as a council vote, trampling Konoha's traditions of fairness and open debate. He'd neglected to consult the Sarutobi, Midamon, Udatane, Shimura, and Inoshikacho clans, yet he'd installed members of his own Hyuga family, along with allies from the Wesker and Black Light clans, in the village's most critical posts. To many, it smacked of a power grab. As the other shinobi houses bristled with anxiety, one fact stood out. Ethan wasn't standing alone. Where Minato Namikaze had stood as a lone pillar of strength, Ethan's authority rested on the unshakable backing of his clan's might. Ethan Hyuga enjoyed the full support and unwavering trust of his entire clan, allowing him to face any challenge with a composed confidence. As word of his resolve and strength spread, more ninjas abandoned their passive stance. Rather than hang back and observe, they came forward, pledging themselves at Ethan's camp. Ethan welcomed each new ally without hesitation. After all, it had once been all of Konoha that had isolated him and demanded his submission. Now, the tables had turned. Konoha's other houses found themselves marginalized and forced to negotiate. There was no sense in further posturing. Ethan had proven his point. Instead, he deliberately offered up dividends that rightfully belonged to the Sarutobi clan and the other ninja families, slicing them into the spoils he'd claimed. Faced with that generosity, the Sarutobi and the other clans had no choice but to accept. Even Wesker and Alex, who cared little for ninjutsu, joined in. They had secured the Book of Seals, after all, and understood better than anyone that progress in the divine realm demanded single-minded dedication. Those who tried to master every technique at once, spreading themselves too thin, rarely went far. With Ethan's leadership, at least, their path forward was clear. They finally tapped into the Hokage's power and accessed Konoha's records. As they absorbed more details about this world, their exploration progress surged forward. No surprise, the 5 great ninja villages held priceless intelligence, Konoha above all. Ethan studied the new data with growing resolve. Still, he couldn't shake the thought that reality might differ from his projections. Simply conquering the 5 villages to max out his exploration gauge would be a dangerous misstep. Chapter 954, Fireballs Rain Down, the ninja world transformed. Ethan floated in the warmth of the sun's corona, a satisfied grin spreading across his face. From this vantage point in outer space, he watched the boss team he'd assembled tear the ninja world apart, and he knew it was time to claim every last watt of solar power it had to offer. This world was overseen by Otsutsuki Shibawi, a transcendent being whose strength eclipsed entire universes. Thanks to Shibawi's presence, the energy Ethan absorbed here dwarfed anything he'd encountered before, second only to the legendary solar forces of the Marvel and DC worlds, and barely a half step behind the raw power of the Dragon Ball universe. Back on the ground, Virgil had reached a private accord with Black Zetsu and abandoned further spying and reconnaissance. But chaos was anything but quelled. After Boros's surprise attack on the Hidden Mist village, Uchiha Obito and Black Zetsu found themselves scrambling to rebuild their foothold and support the ninja forces under their sway. Originally, Albert Wesker and Alex had been entrusted with creating a deadly Poison Village, a clandestine faction of toxic ninjas. Ethan had intended to sit back and savor the fallout. Now, however, with the balance of power shifting so unpredictably, he decided it was time to dive back into the fray. Let them all put on a spectacular show. Ethan would be ready for every twist, every strike, and every fireball that rained down. The sky tore itself apart that evening, shattering the fragile peace of the shinobi world. Just as the last glow of sunset smothered the horizon, a blinding scarlet light cleaved the clouds, a blazing orb like a phoenix in flame, its trailing tail stretching across half the sky. Even the most seasoned ninja felt their hearts tighten at the sheer magnitude of its energy. High above the land of thunder, the Hidden Cloud Village, celebrated for its potent lightning jutsu and pioneering technology, stood transfixed by this unprecedented celestial phenomenon. In one of its research wings, Ethan, the young prodigy spearheading chakra cannon development, abandoned his instruments and joined his colleagues at the window. Blueprints fluttered to the floor as every scientist pressed forward, eyes wide with equal measures of wonder and dread. Never before had anything so immense descended from the heavens. Breaking the hushed awe, a veteran researcher barked, "Notify the village council and sound the alert across all perimeter posts. Now, activate the emergency monitoring system. I want a full report on that anomaly immediately." Perched atop the Hidden Cloud Village's tallest watchtower, the Raikage Eye, a broad-shouldered man with hawk-like eyes, barked the order at his deputy. Whatever had caused that strange phenomenon could pose an enormous threat, not just to the Cloud Village, but to the entire shinobi world. Below them, Cloud Shinobi sprinted into action, gathering weapons and securing vantage points in preparation for any contingency. Far to the south, the Hidden Rock Village seemed almost unfazed by the distant flare of the fireball. Renowned across the land for their earth release techniques and steadfast traditions, the Rock Shinobi went about their daily routines without missing a beat. Yet they were far from oblivious. Though they rarely cast their gaze skyward, they possessed an uncanny sensitivity to seismic disturbances. When the fireball struck the Valley of the End, its shockwaves rippled through the ground, rousing rock ninja from their homes. They stepped outside, exchanged wary glances, and felt an undercurrent of unease ripple through their ranks. They realized at once that these tremors weren't natural. Something hidden lay behind them. Far across the land of fire, Konoha Village shuddered under an unprecedented shockwave. In the Hokage's office, 5th Hokage Hinata Jing had already called an emergency meeting with his senior advisors. Through the wide window, he watched a massive, burning orb streak toward the village, and a cold premonition settled in his chest. As the heart of the ninja world, Konoha must always bear the brunt of every new crisis. "Sound the village-wide alert," Hinata ordered, his voice calm but firm. "Send a reconnaissance squad to the Valley of the End immediately. I want a full report on that fireball, its size, speed, trajectory, everything." As his aides sprang into action, Hinata turned to locate Captain Wesker and Lieutenant Alex. They were his best field operatives. If anyone could uncover the truth behind this menace, it would be them. Elsewhere, in the dim recesses beneath the village, Black Zetsu stirred with growing unease. He sensed this force far more clearly than any other, and it pressed against him like a silent scream. "An Otsutsuki presence?" he murmured, voice thick with disbelief. "No, this isn't Kaguya's clan. It's something utterly unfamiliar." As the living embodiment of Kaguya Otsutsuki's will, Black Zetsu had studied her lineage more thoroughly than anyone alive. Yet now he stared into a mystery that challenged every secret he thought he knew. His twisted smile faded into a knot of dread and curiosity as he prepared to learn the truth, whatever the cost. Ethan's heart pounded as the immense power before him left him with an unfamiliar, unsettling chill. He watched in awe as the swirling smoke and dust began to clear, and from the shadows stepped the silent, sinuous form of Black Zetsu. Hidden in the darkness, Zetsu's pale eyes never blinked. As the very embodiment of Kaguya Otsutsuki's will, he harbored an absolute loyalty to his mother and an unwavering vigilance against anything that might threaten her grand design. Now, more than ever, he was certain that this mysterious burst of energy concealed some hidden agenda, perhaps even the work of another Otsutsuki agent. "We cannot allow it to derail Mother's plan," he vowed inwardly. Black Zetsu began weaving his schemes, preparing to strike decisively the moment the opportunity arose. Far beyond this world, in a realm of pure spirit, the sage of six paths, Otsutsuki Hagoromo, felt the same tremor of power, his ancient brow furrowed as a storm of concern flickered in his eyes. "A strange presence. Could a new threat have emerged?" he murmured, voice heavy with worry. Though his body had long since passed on, Hagoromo's duty as guardian of the ninja world would never allow him to stand idly by. Ethan crouched behind a tangle of roots, his heart thundering in his chest. The Valley of the End. A place steeped in legend, where Hashirama Senju and Uchiha Madara once clashed in a battle that shaped history, was supposed to lie peaceful and silent. Instead, it trembled under an ominous red glare on the horizon. A fireball, larger than any jutsu he'd ever seen, hurtled toward the valley with relentless force. Ethan braced himself as it struck the ground with an earth-shaking boom. Dust and molten debris erupted upward, blotting out the sun and turning the sky into a swirling haze. Even the jagged peaks that framed the valley vanished behind the choking clouds. When the dust finally settled, Ethan dared to move and gasped. The massive stone statues of Senju Hashirama and Uchiha Madara, once immovable icons of both war and peace, lay in ruins. Cracks had spidered across their weathered surfaces before the statues collapsed into heaps of rubble that clattered and skidded across the riverbank. But the fireball hadn't detonated as everyone feared. Instead, its fiery shell had simply faded. In its place rested a single enormous sphere, faintly luminous and humming with an energy that made the hairs on Ethan's arms stand on end. It lay half-buried at the very end of the valley, surrounded by swirling motes of power that pulsed like a heartbeat. Ethan swallowed hard. Whatever this object was, it had just rewritten every rule he knew, and he had no idea whether it was a gift, a weapon, or something far more dangerous. Yet as the glow intensified, a single thought crystallized in his mind. He had to get closer, no matter the risk. Ethan stared in disbelief at the golden-haired scion standing beside him. "Raditz," he said, trying to keep his voice steady, "we can't rush in to face Great Demon King Piccolo." Even in his degenerated form, Piccolo's power to lay waste to entire nations would be meaningless here. This was the world of ninja, where shinobi with chakra could move faster than the eye and unleash techniques that made planet-busting ki attacks look tame. Raditz, fresh from hyperspace, pushed open the hatch of their scouting craft and stepped onto the dusty plain. In his mind, the ninja world was a jackpot, a planet with a breathable atmosphere, lush terrain, and resources so rich they'd command exorbitant prices back in Scion-held sectors. Everything about it screamed easy conquest. Still, a question nagged at him. Why weren't Saiyan warriors outfitted with breathing masks? What if they touched down on a world whose air was toxic or too thin for a Saiyan's lungs? After all, their physiology depended on oxygen. When they sparred or pushed past their limits, they needed every molecule. Maybe the Saiyan High Command simply banked on invading only planets with hospitable atmospheres. Or perhaps the Dragon Ball universe was built differently, a place where no foreign virus or alien bacterium had ever threatened Saiyan development or wiped out entire colonies. Either way, Raditz shook off the doubts and powered up, the golden glow of his Super Saiyan aura shimmering in the midday sun. Beside him, Ethan clenched his fists, ready to face whatever challenges this new world and its most infamous warlord might throw at them. Chapter 955, Sweeping the Ninja World. Raditz, Virgil, Boros, and the others all felt the raw, searing power rolling off that fireball. As soon as he materialized, Raditz casually tapped his scouter and sneered. "What a disappointment," he muttered. "I came looking for a real challenge, but there's nothing here." A cruel smile curved across his face as he gazed down at the planet's inhabitants with absolute contempt. His scouter read their combat powers in the low hundreds, utterly negligible compared to his own rating of 1,500. To him, the difference was as vast as an ant trying to battle a dragon. Still, Raditz wasn't about to return empty-handed. He already had a more ambitious plan in mind. True, the life forms here were pathetic, but the world itself was stunning. Soaring mountain ranges, crystal-clear rivers, sweeping valleys thick with emerald forests. It was precisely the kind of unspoiled paradise that wealthy off-world nobles coveted above all else. If he claimed this planet and sold it to the highest bidder, the profits would dwarf anything he could earn from mere inhabitants. He imagined the staggering rewards, dozens or even hundreds of times the going rate for an average world. With that kind of bounty waiting, how could he possibly turn back now? Raditz had conquered the planet easily, simply because its defenders were so weak. A greedy light sparked in his eyes as he turned to follow the faint signal on his scouter. Amid dozens of barely perceptible readings, one energy fluctuation stood out. Though it was insignificant compared to his own strength, here it ranked among the most powerful. At the same time, Boros was closing in on the Hidden Rock village. His pace looked unhurried, but each step carried a razor-sharp awareness of his surroundings. As one of the few true heavyweights in the universe, he was no stranger to solitude or challenge. Rather than fear this new potent aura, he felt his blood surge with long-lost excitement. "This power, it's extraordinary," he murmured. Boros came to a stop, closed his eyes, and drew in a deep breath. He focused, reaching out with his senses to lock on to the approaching energy. It was unlike anything he'd ever encountered, an almost violent force that seemed capable of tearing space itself, rattling stars, and setting his veins ablaze. Beneath a blood-red sky, streaked by the fallout of earlier clashes, Boros readied himself for whatever came next. He hadn't even reached for his weapon when Raditz's silhouette emerged from the haze, stepping forward like a ghost summoned from the wreckage. The two warriors stood off, the air between them heavy with the acrid scent of gunpowder, as if a single stray spark could level the entire wasteland. Raditz broke the silence with a low, resonant challenge. "So, you're this planet's strongest fighter?" He gave extra weight to strongest, both daring and taunting. Boros let the words hang for a moment. Then he tipped his head, a faint, confident smile touching his lips. His eyes shone with eager anticipation. "Strongest? I can't say that. But you're powerful enough to remind me why I love a real fight." A cruel smirk curled Raditz's mouth. He'd been waiting for this very invitation, an opponent worthy of pushing him to his limits. "Very well," he said, voice laced with disdain. "Show me what you've got." Ethan lifted his hand, focusing his ki until a sphere of white energy formed in his palm. This was his signature Saiyan technique, the air bullet. "All right, let's see what you can really do," he called out. With a roar that rattled the ground, Boros surged forward like a bolt of lightning. He moved so fast that the air itself tore open, hissing and cracking in his wake. Yet Ethan remained perfectly composed. He gave a small, almost casual wave of his left hand, hardly more than a gesture of farewell, yet the sheer force behind it was enough to shatter mountains. The air bullet and Boros's charging strike met in midair with a blinding flash and an ear-splitting boom. The very sky seemed to shift color as the two forces collided. A massive shockwave ripped outward, and everywhere it passed, towering trees, solid rock, it reduced them to powder in an instant. Dust and debris roiled into the sky, blotting out the sun and shrouding the battlefield in a choking haze. Yet, in the moments after their earth-shaking clash, something surprising occurred. Ethan's compressed air bomb wasn't extinguished by Boros's mountain-splitting punch. Empowered by a surge of raw energy, it ripped through his fist and continued its deadly trajectory toward him. Boros's expression flickered. At the last possible instant, he summoned his superhuman speed and darted aside, avoiding what would surely have been a fatal strike. The air projectile whipped past him and slammed into a distant peak, blasting it to rubble. Chunks of stone cascaded down like rain. "Interesting," Ethan murmured, a faint smile crossing his face as he watched the avalanche of dust settle. Confident that his opponent had felt the full force of his attack, he raised his other hand, fingertips crackling with fresh energy, ready to unleash an even more brutal assault. But Boros would not stand still and wait for the next blow. He understood all too well that in the face of overwhelming power, even the most exotic techniques could prove futile. Instead, he opted for the most direct solution, a full-throttle, head-on charge. In that decisive moment, two unstoppable forces prepared to collide once more, each determined that only one would walk away from the wreckage. Ethan's power erupted from his body like a volcanic blast, condensing into a blinding bolt of lightning aimed straight at Boros. "Looking for death," he roared. Boros threw his head back in a wild laugh and swung a punch. Their blows met in midair with a deafening crack that seemed to boil the surrounding air. Concentric shockwaves rippled outward from the impact point. Boros's fist splintered beneath Ethan's overwhelming force, scattering blood and debris through the sky. Still, Boros didn't flinch. Gritting his teeth against the searing pain, he used the recoil to realign his posture, readying himself for another strike. But Ethan was faster. No sooner had Boros regained his balance than Ethan materialized behind him and drove a crushing kick into his waist. Boros went flying, his body arcing like a kite with a snapped string before crashing heavily to the ground. The shockwave from the impact rattled windows and shook the earth all the way to nearby Iwagakure village. "What was that?" Onoki muttered as the ground beneath him shuddered. Convinced it was an earthquake, he kicked off and shot up into the sky. Chapter 956, Dust Release, Escape vs. Airbomb. Even Onoki, perched high in Iwagakure village, was pulled from his meditation by a thunderous boom. He leaped into the sky, convinced that an earthquake had struck, and sped toward the disruptive sound. As he drew near, the sight stopped him cold. Two colossal shinobi locked in fierce combat, each clash ripping the earth apart. Jagged fissures yawned across the landscape, and boulders shattered like glass. Onoki's keen eyes told him these were no ordinary fighters. Their strength far exceeded even his expectations. If their battle continued unchecked, nearby villages would be devastated. He knew he had to act. Gathering his chakra, Onoki called upon his most powerful jutsu. Dust Release, Escape. He chose a dust release technique because a mere earth release wouldn't contain opponents of such overwhelming power. As swirling clouds of pulverized rock filled the air, Onoki braced himself, determined to rein in the titans before more destruction could follow. Ethan's hand hovered at his side, ready to spring into action, until a calm, familiar voice cut through the tension. "Fifth Tsuchikage Onoki," it said, "please hold your ground. This is a destined contest between them. Outsiders must not intervene." From atop the village walls, one of Iwagakure's council elders shouted in alarm, "My lord, if you stand down now, their fight will spill into our streets, and Iwagakure won't survive the fallout." Onoki's gaze didn't waver. Known across the land as both brilliant and stubborn, the elderly Tsuchikage once drove his own disciples away by sheer force of will. Now, holding the fabled dust release in his weathered hand, he seemed ready to challenge even the likes of Uchiha Madara or Senju Hashirama, let alone two unknown warriors of extraordinary power. "Dust Escape, Art of Primal Shattering," Onoki roared. His gnarled fingers wove a rapid series of hand seals, drawing on wind, earth, and fire chakra all at once. In an instant, rippling currents of raw power coalesced into a perfect, translucent cube of light. Though it hovered serenely between his palms, its brilliance belied a cataclysmic force, one capable of tearing the very world asunder. The dust release, a violent fusion of wind, earth, and fire, rips its target down to the atomic level. Unless someone wields the legendary Samsara Eye, a direct hit means certain death. Obeying Onoki's will, the dust release barrier warped and expanded into a colossal cylinder, hurtling toward Raditz with unstoppable force. Raditz, who until now had been effortlessly dominating Boros, froze in surprise as the cylinder slammed into him. His scouter went berserk, flashing red alarms and shrieking in protest. He stared at the elderly form before him, bewildered by the sheer destructive power this frail-looking man had just unleashed. Saiyan pride flared within him. How could a fighter with a measured power level under 100 trigger such an intense warning? What? My scouter's reading less than 100, and yet it flagged this attack? He snarled. Ryuretsu, he roared in response, veins bulging like steel cables beneath his skin. Clasping his hands before him, he drew in a burning ki that crackled and roared. With a sudden thrust, he formed the energy into a single, towering ki bomb, an explosive sphere powerful enough to obliterate an asteroid. Boom! Raditz's air bomb, capable of obliterating a moon-sized asteroid, rocketed toward Onoki's dust barrier. Moments later, boom! Two utterly different yet equally overwhelming energies collided overhead in a deafening explosion. The shimmering wall of atomic particles met Raditz's shockwave, unleashing a blinding flash as if the sky itself had burst into flame. The heat warped the surrounding air into rippling mirages. When the smoke and debris finally cleared, a vast crater yawned at the heart of the battlefield. Everything nearby had been vaporized. Yet to everyone's surprise, neither combatant had prevailed. Onoki's barrier, though formidable, quivered under the force of Raditz's planet's hattering power. And Raditz's bomb, despite its titanic destructive potential, could not breach the atomic-scale defense that stripped away nearly all incoming matter. Both warriors staggered back several paces, eyes locked in a tense mixture of respect and apprehension, each sizing up the other's astonishing strength. Onoki stood firm, marveling inwardly. He had never faced an opponent with such raw power. Raditz, too, was taken aback by Onoki's ability to disperse his ki into nothingness. He now understood that this unassuming planet hid a terrifying secret. "This is the Hidden Stone Village," Onoki announced, his voice echoing across the barren outcrop. "It's not a place for the arrogant." Despite recognizing Raditz's overwhelming strength, Onoki showed no sign of fear. That steel resolve confirmed what Raditz had only just realized. It wasn't a matter of his ki being too weak, but of it being annihilated the moment it made contact. Onoki's unique energy signature neutralized Raditz's attacks at the subatomic level, leaving almost nothing behind. Raditz's lips curved into a knowing smile. "I see," he murmured. "So I don't need to hurl mountains of ki at you." In fact, once the annihilation process began, it could not be stopped. Better still, the effect worked both ways. By channeling only 1,000th of his usual power, Raditz could cancel out Onoki's counterattacks entirely. From there, all that remained was to keep up relentless pressure, overwhelming the old shinobi before he had a chance to react. With a flash of determination, Raditz raised his hand. Energy crackled around his outstretched fingers as he fixed Onoki with an unblinking stare. The air grew electric, charged with the promise of a showdown neither of them would soon forget. Raditz's ki flared as he thrust his hands forward, unleashing a rapid volley of compressed energy spheres. Each chi bullet, crackling with terrifying force, streaked through the air like cannon fire. They were astonishingly fast and densely packed. Any one of them could obliterate a hillside in an instant. Onoki's eyes widened. He understood that if even a single bomb slipped past his defenses, the entire Hidden Stone Village would be devastated. "Dust release. Detachment technique," he cried. In the next heartbeat, Onoki's fingers formed the complex seals. Chakra boiled up inside him like molten rock, surging outward to construct a colossal, invisible cube around the battlefield. This barrier spanned the entire front lines, and whatever it touched was atomized, stripped down to its most fundamental particles. When the first chi bomb slammed into the barrier, there was no explosion, only the eerie sense of it being swallowed whole, vanishing without a trace. The second, the third, each subsequent attack fared no better. One by one, Raditz's energy spheres were consumed, phasing out before they could even graze the barrier's edge. Raditz's expression flickered between frustration and disbelief. Onoki lowered his arms, calm and unshaken, as the dust of dispelled attacks settled around them. The hidden stone village remained safe, for now, protected by the might of the dust release detachment technique. Dozens of airborne bombs rained down in rapid succession, yet not a single one pierced the seemingly fragile barrier. Onoki's dust release, limit-stripping technique proved astonishingly resilient, dissipating Raditz's ferocious attacks one after another. Despite the barrier holding firm, Onoki's expression was grave. He understood this triumph was only temporary. Raditz's true power far exceeded what he'd already unleashed. Onoki had to channel every ounce of his energy into stabilizing the defense, waiting for the perfect moment to strike back. Chapter 957, Fierce Battle. "Stay out of my fight!" Boros's booming voice cut through the commotion like a blade. Ethan halted in mid-stride. Beside him, Raditz spun to face the newcomer, eyes flashing with indignation. The two fighters stood in tense silence, measuring this unexpected intruder. Raditz grinned, pushing his scouter aside. "You're strong," he admitted, voice heavy with restrained excitement. "Stronger than I've seen in ages. Finally, someone who can force me to use my full power." Boros's gaze was cool and steady. "Then prove it. Give it your all." Raditz threw back his head and laughed. "I'm Raditz," he declared, puffing out his chest. "What's your name?" "I am Boros," came the calm reply, "and this battle ends with your defeat." Before Raditz could tense for an attack, something deep within Boros stirred. A blinding light flared from his body, waves of energy rippling outward and flattening the ground beneath them. Raditz's scouter shuddered, its display flickering wildly until it shattered with a crack. "What? Impossible!" Raditz screamed, disbelief and fear warring in his eyes. Boros's aura pulsed brighter, a palpable force that far exceeded anything the Saiyan expected. Ethan watched, heart pounding, as Boros stood at the very edge of his power and prepared to unleash it. The battlefield itself trembled, bracing for the coming clash of titans. He bellowed, "I'll convert every ounce of energy in my body into propulsion, unleashing speed and power that shatter biological limits. Witness my true strength." Meteor explosion. At his cry, a colossal roar ripped through the sky. Invisible forces reshaped Boros from the inside out. Every cell, every bone, every fiber of flesh ravenously absorbed the surrounding energy, transmuting it into raw, unbridled power. His body convulsed with earth-shaking intensity. Silver hair shot down his back like a molten waterfall. The single eyes on his face and chest morphed into swirling black and white spirals. Deep blue veins of energy webbed across his skin, while brilliant streaks of white light crackled over his form, wrapping him in the aura of a meteor about to tear through the heavens. In this state, Boros moved at staggering sublight speeds. Each motion sprang not from muscle, but from the surging energy coursing through him. His every strike carried the force of a cosmic bolt, indestructible, unstoppable, and beyond anything the universe had ever seen. Ethan's mind blanked for a heartbeat. Boros had turned his speed into a razor-sharp weapon. In the next instant, he was nothing more than a brilliant streak of light, darting between sky and earth and trailing kaleidoscopic afterimages and thunderous sonic booms in his wake. Ethan barely had time to brace himself. At sublight velocity, Boros was untouchable. Every dodge felt hopelessly slow. Then, with the force of a comet striking a planet, Boros's fist smashed into Ethan's chest. For a split second, the world froze. The impact blasted Ethan off his feet. He hurtled through the atmosphere faster than any human or even most aliens could survive, a searing golden plume arching behind him. That fiery tail was air heated to white-hot temperatures by sheer friction, so bright it outshone nearby stars, as if the universe itself bowed before the moment's raw power. Under that unimaginable acceleration, Ethan's body groaned. His muscles quivered, his bones rattled, even his cells felt as though they might tear apart. Desperately, he tried to summon enough strength to counterattack. But against Boros's overwhelming force, every ounce of effort seemed to vanish into nothingness. The impact twisted the very fabric of space, spawning miniature black holes that hungrily swallowed everything in their path. Light, dust, even stray bursts of energy. Ethan unleashed a furious roar as his own ki flared, driving him backward with enough force to finally bring him to a standstill. But he didn't have a moment to catch his breath. Boros was already streaking toward him, intent on ending the fight. Boros' speed bordered on the impossible, rivaling sublight velocity, and his reactions were almost as fast. Still, Ethan wasn't helpless. Drawing on his ki, an advanced form of life energy capable of reinforcing the body and shattering personal limits, he summoned a deep, resonant roar. Every muscle swelled as if infused with an invisible might, and a faint golden glow pulsed beneath his skin, the unmistakable sign of ki surging through his veins. Beneath Ethan's feet, the void itself quivered and tore, tiny whirlpools of warped space spinning into existence. In that moment, he ceased to be merely a man and became a raw force of nature, a living embodiment of power measured not in flesh but in numbers. Boros vanished in an instant, reappearing as a beam of blinding light that hurtled toward Ethan at nearly sublight speed. All that remained in his wake were streaks of brilliance and deafening sonic booms tearing through the void. Refusing to be outmatched, Ethan ignited his ki, pushing his body to match Boros's velocity. He became a cascade of afterimages, each movement crackling with raw energy, like a comet streaking across the cosmos. Their speeds far outstripped the drifting stars around them, transforming their duel into a breathtaking celestial spectacle. Just as Boros closed the distance, he kicked off the emptiness with shattering force. Energy erupted from his legs, propelling him like a rocket. With every ounce of power focused into his right fist, he condensed a swirling sphere of energy that bent the surrounding space. Then, with a bone-rattling roar, he drove his fist straight into Ethan's chest. Boom! The impact echoed across light years. Ethan braced himself, but the sheer force of the blow sent him tumbling backward, stars themselves quivering at the final crash. Ethan shot through the sky like a blazing meteor, his body streaking a brilliant gold as the immense heat from the friction between his chi and the atmosphere ignited the air around him. Boros seized the opportunity and gave chase, but Ethan was in his element. He'd grown accustomed to battling at such blistering speeds. True, his natural talent had made him complacent. He'd never pushed himself to train rigorously, preferring to rely on raw power and brute force. Yet that very strength made it impossible for him to endure defeat, especially at the hands of someone clearly outmatched. "I am a Saiyan," he roared, gathering his ki in a sudden burst that propelled him forward like a rocket. In an instant, he slammed into Boros with all the force he could muster. Boom! The impact shattered the air itself, unleashing a colossal shockwave that rippled outward in a mountainous wall of energy hundreds of meters high. From a safe distance, Onoki's eyes widened in disbelief as the thunderous blast churned the surrounding clouds and sent tremors across the battlefield. Chapter 958, Raditz is defeated. Elder Onoki's chakra reserves were nearly spent. He had already poured tremendous energy into intercepting dozens of gas bombs, and now gargantuan waves, hundreds of meters high, rose from the clash of these supercharged combatants. The sheer scale of the devastation dwarfed even the legendary battle he'd witnessed between Uchiha Madara and Senju Hashirama. If left unchecked, these roaring tidal walls could have flattened the entire landscape. With the waves hurtling toward the hidden stone village like rampaging beasts, Onoki realized he had no choice but to unleash his final trump card. He formed hand seals in rapid succession and chanted, "Dust Release, Detachment Technique." Instantly, a vast, translucent cube flared into being around the village. Its jagged edges shimmered with raw, atom-sundering power. As the first wall of liquid and debris slammed into the barrier, time itself seemed to halt. Every droplet, every grain of sand, froze in midair. Then, with a silent explosion of energy, Onoki's limit-stripping technique activated. The barrier reduced each fragment to its most fundamental components, molecules, then atoms, until nothing remained but an imperceptible haze. The monstrous waves vanished without a trace, leaving only a gentle breeze in their wake. Yet even as the dust settled, Onoki's heart pounded with unease. He knew this defensive miracle could not end the crisis. It had merely delayed the storm. The true battle was only just beginning. Towering walls of earth surged skyward, hundreds of meters tall, rushing forward like an unstoppable tide determined to swallow the world. Hidden Rock Village, once cradled among peaceful peaks and rocky outcrops, found its familiar terrain twisted into instruments of ruin. The very mountains shattered and rebounded under the barrage, amplifying the cataclysmic force. Far beyond the village's borders, the land of Earth suffered equally. Entire towns and hamlets were swept away. Anguished cries of despair rose on the wind as elders and children alike watched their homes vanish in an instant. At the heart of this devastation, two titanic powers hurtled toward each other at sublight speed, colliding in a maelstrom of shock waves and roaring energy currents that rattled the heavens. Perched atop the village's defenses, third Tsuchikage Onoki gritted his teeth, pouring every last ounce of his chakra into maintaining the dust-release barrier. His ancient body trembled under the strain. How long could he hold out? "My lord Onoki," came the cry from the village entrance. In a seamless, practiced motion, Hidden Rock's shinobi surged forward, channeling earth chakra into the ground beneath their feet. With one unified chant, Doton, Doryu Kahe, Earth Release, Earth Flow Wall, they lifted massive slabs of rock and soil into the air. Those stones knit together into a solid, rippling wall that encircled the village, each panel bristling with chakra. Beneath the defenders' feet, the land itself rose up to meet the onslaught. An unbreakable bastion born of the village's collective will. Though the world trembled around them, Hidden Rock Village stood its ground. The operator shaped the earth beneath him, transforming a flat plain into a jagged mountain range in an instant. "Earth Release, 10,000 league shifting earth wall," he called, and, with the combined efforts of several Earth-style shinobi, a barrier rose as massive and unyielding as the Great Wall of China. Onoki never wavered in holding up his dust-release barrier. He understood perfectly well that, against a shock wave of this magnitude, even the tallest earth wall could only dull its impact. Fortunately, the ferocious clash between Boros and Raditz had already moved far from their position. When their powers collided, the shockwave ripped through the very fabric of space, opening jagged cracks that shimmered in midair, as though time itself had begun to fracture. The force unleashed by their sublight speed collision was beyond ordinary comprehension. It wasn't merely matter, striking matter, it was the violent convergence of raw energies, tearing and fusing in a single blinding explosion. In that instant, Boros's body became the most fragile thing in the universe. His form splintered under the assault, dissolving into countless motes of energy and dust, scattered by the storm of power they had unleashed. Particles collided, fused, and shattered in dizzying succession, evoking the very chaos of the Big Bang. In that moment, Boros's bones, muscles, even his cells unraveled into the universe's most basic, unstable building blocks. Each drifting fragment still held a spark of his life force, yet they drifted helplessly through the void, unable to recombine. Ethan, by contrast, had weathered the cataclysm intact. His Saiyan Ki flared into a protective aura, shielding him from total disintegration. Though his body bore fresh scratches and scorches, those injuries were trivial next to Boros's utter collapse. Suspended in the emptiness of space, Ethan surveyed the cosmic aftermath with a triumphant smirk, pride swelling at the might of his own race. "Ha! This is the true power of the Saiyans," he declared, his voice echoing across the silent expanse. Boros sensed that his body, reduced to billions of microscopic fragments, could never reassemble itself, but for him that was no obstacle. As long as he retained even a sliver of energy, he was immortal. Amid the swirling maelstrom of particles, he tapped into the last reserves of power within him. Brilliant as newborn stars, those energies coalesced into a roaring torrent. Almost at once, Boros's form began to rebuild itself at an astonishing pace. The dispersed particles, drawn together by the raw force of his energy, snapped back into place, bones reshaping, muscles knitting, skin reforming, as if time itself were rolling backward to before the moment of his destruction. "I remember you, Saiyan Raditz," Boros exclaimed, voice ringing with exhilaration. This was the iteration of Boros that Ethan had engineered, the version untested by Saitama's overwhelming strength and still hungry for a true fight. After drifting in the prime god realm with nothing but cosmic echoes for company, he had finally found an adversary worthy of his might. With a roar, Boros pushed every ounce of his recovered power into the ground beneath him. Each step he took sent ripples through the fabric of the universe, laws of reality trembling under the force of his acceleration. He was coming, unstoppable, unbroken, and more eager for battle than ever. The ground beneath Ethan's feet no longer felt like solid support. It had become an altar bearing witness to his power. The moment he unleashed his full Scarenia, the earth trembled. Cracks raced outward like spiderwebs, sending plumes of dust swirling in his wake. But that was only the beginning. At sublight speed, the friction between Ethan and the air ignited an unimaginable heat, far hotter than any volcanic eruption recorded in the history of the ninja world. This was more than mere temperature. It was a force capable of ripping matter asunder and reshaping the very landscape. Rocks and soil along his path liquefied instantly, pooling into rivers of molten magma that writhed like furious fire dragons in his wake. And still the heat climbed. In moments, the magma boiled away into wisps of white vapor that vanished into the sky, leaving only charred black streaks on the ground. Through it all, Ethan himself burned with the intensity of a falling sun, each movement crackling with lightning and thunder, as if the heavens themselves had answered his call. Ethan's lightning didn't come from the outside world. It was born of the energy roiling within his own body. Each crackling bolt carried searing heat and electromagnetic force powerful enough to shatter a planet. They danced around him, erupting without warning and annihilating everything in their path. Solid rock and molten magma alike vanished the moment they were struck, sublimating into an invisible gas that drifted off into the void. As Ethan's speed climbed ever higher, he seemed to merge with a beam of cosmic light, ripping through the fabric of space and time as he hurtled toward his target. Raditz. Chapter 959, Obito. What is a Saiyan? Ethan was struck by an overwhelming surge of frustration and powerlessness. His eyes flew open, and in their reflection he saw Boros's form, so swift it defied normal sight. It was a visceral assault on the very idea of strength. Though Ethan had battle blood coursing through his veins and enough might to shake the stars, Boros's godlike, near-light-speed movements rendered his pride as fragile as glass. Every time Boros accelerated, it rang out across the cosmos like a declaration of dominance. No mere boost in speed, but a shattering of power's ultimate boundary. The energy coiled in Boros's knees felt like the gravity of an entire universe, condensed into one moment with the intent to annihilate. This was force unbound by physical law, the purest incarnation of destruction. Then the collision came, and time itself seemed to freeze. Ethan felt each thunderous pulse of Boros's knee crash into him, a perfect fusion of velocity and strength, the most sublime, violent beauty the universe had ever witnessed. Ethan's ki, once a steadfast shield against every threat, shattered like tissue paper under this overwhelming power. The moment his barrier collapsed, it felt as though an invisible lance had driven into his chest, pain crashing over him in merciless waves. He tried to summon his energy for a counterattack, but his limbs were frozen as if nailed to the spot, drowning in a despair born of total helplessness. He understood, with grim clarity, that the initiative had slipped from his grasp. All he could do was brace himself for Boros's next move. Then, with a devastating final knee strike, Boros sent Ethan hurtling into the void. Propelled through the air at impossible speed, Ethan's senses spun. The very fabric of space around him twisted and contorted, an awe-inspiring distortion beyond human comprehension. He found himself inside a warped tunnel of space-time, where shapes and distances dissolved and the flow of time itself grew erratic. Seconds stretched into eternity, each moment dragging him deeper into disorientation and dread. Ethan awoke in a void of silence and shadow, his senses battered by the emptiness around him. He reached out, desperate for something, anything, to steady his racing mind, but there was only unbroken darkness. Then, without warning, the moon's surface thundered up to meet him. The sheer force of his high-altitude descent nearly tore his consciousness apart. His body slammed into the lunar crust with an earth-shaking roar, shattering rock and flinging dust and gravel into graceful, violent arcs. For a fleeting moment, he could almost hear the moon itself groan in pain, feel the ancient satellite quake beneath the blow. Before him unfolded a cataclysmic, lunar tide, the crust lifting in a colossal wave of boulders and regolith, only to crash back down in a deafening cascade. Each collision of rock on rock sent shockwaves rippling through the crater, and a choking storm of powdery dust swirled in every direction, as if the entire moon trembled at his arrival. When the chaos finally subsided, Ethan lay sprawled at the center of a newly carved crater, cradled by the scarred lunar soil. His body throbbed with pain from countless wounds, and dark blood seeped through his battle gi, staining the jagged stones that surrounded him. Yet even in agony, he knew one thing for certain: he was still alive. Ethan's entire body screamed in protest, sharp pains flaring with every heartbeat, but there was no time to pay attention. Fury burned hotter than any wound as he stared across the blasted lunar landscape at Boros. What kind of power was that? Ethan's thoughts thundered. How could a nobody from beyond the stars overwhelm him so completely? His Saiyan pride, forged in countless battles, felt trampled and humiliated. He was a Saiyan, descended from the fiercest warriors in the universe. How dare this alien reduce him to dust? He didn't pause to consider the terrible price he'd already paid. The devastating impact of his last attack had unleashed a tidal wave of energy that wiped out the Otsutsuki main and branch families scattered across the moon's surface. In that moment, the entire clan had vanished. Gritting his teeth against the pain, Ethan gathered every ounce of his ki and rocketed toward the portal leading to the ninja world. He had to finish this now. Boros panted behind him, massive ribs rising and falling in frantic gasps. Attaining his meteor burst form was like forcing his body into an anaerobic sprint. At speeds like these, even air felt as hard as stone. To maintain such velocity and power, Boros had to clamp his throat shut and hold his breath. Every inhalation threatened to slow him down. Neither warrior would relent. On the threshold between the moon's shattered plane and the psychic gateway to another realm, their clash was far from over. That strike should have killed the Saiyan, Boros muttered, certain of his victory. But Raditz staggered to his feet, spitting out a curse. "You wish, you bastard!" He unleashed a compressed gas blast. Boros's single eye snapped open wide, his contracting pupil lending him an almost comical look, yet inside he was stunned. Never before had an opponent absorbed his full power and kept fighting. Though Raditz was badly wounded, the aura he now exuded was even more terrifying. Drawn by the overwhelming ki, Black Zetsu and Uchiha Obito burst onto the battlefield. Obito's Sharingan flared as he took in the chaos. What's happening here? Who are those two? The raw ferocity of the clash sent a chill down Obito's spine. He had never encountered such power. He even wondered if Uchiha Madara himself could stand against these invaders. Black Zetsu's reaction was darker still. Once a vessel of the Otsutsuki, he knew all too well that members of that clan could descend and obliterate entire worlds without a second thought. These fighters had to be extraterrestrials, aliens. Raditz had claimed the name Saiyan. Saiyans? What species bore a prehensile monkey-like tail? One truth crystallized amidst the dust and energy. The ninja world now faced a threat unlike any it had ever known. Black Zetsu crouched on the ruined battlefield, mind racing. He'd prepared only for the Otsutsuki invaders, never suspected these two outsiders would arrive ahead of schedule. Now what? Closing his eyes, he forced himself to focus. There's no other choice, he decided. We'll have to rewrite our plans and resurrect Madara. Only Uchiha Madara, reborn and gifted with the Rinnegan, stood a chance against these mysterious aliens. Black Zetsu's conviction sharpened. Just watch them, he said, turning to Obito. They might very well destroy each other. Obito's single visible eye narrowed. And if they don't? He asked, his tone more challenge than question. Black Zetsu huffed in annoyance. That's wishful thinking, Obito. They'll clash only to establish a victor. The loser will flee. Obito snorted. You really believe that? Black Zetsu considered the wide-open sky and the two alien figures poised for combat. He didn't fully understand these beings, but all life followed the same fundamental laws. Survive, conquer territory, then avoid unnecessary risk. Total annihilation was rare. Creatures seldom sacrificed themselves without cause. If you can't win, you withdraw and live to fight another day. He turned back to Obito, confidence gleaming in his voice. Trust me, every living being, no matter how strange, acts on self-preservation. They won't stay for a suicide match. A charged silence fell between them as they waited for the first blows, and for the moment that would allow them to bring Madara back from the depths of death. Chapter 960. Uchiha Madara stepped onto the fractured battlefield and blinked in disbelief. Saiyans? I'm supposed to fight these alien warriors? He muttered, his fan crest twisting in irritation. From the shadows, Uchiha Obito watched with a half-smile. He tapped the hilt of his sword, confident in his mastery of Kamui. No matter how wild the clash became, Obito knew he could slip through dimensions and emerge unscathed. He settled back against a ruined pillar, content to let the two combatants exhaust themselves before declaring a victor. Black Zetsu hovered nearby, its countless tendrils writhing in anticipation. Obito's concerns were trivial next to the task at hand, reviving Uchiha Madara. Today marked the culmination of Orochimaru's tireless research into the impure world reincarnation technique. After countless experiments, with the gruesome help of both Black Zetsu and White Zetsu digging up corpses across the shinobi lands, Orochimaru had finally perfected the ritual. Black Zetsu slipped away to relay the news. Energies were shifting. Soon the greatest Uchiha of all time would walk the world again. Far beyond the hidden leaf, on a desolate plain racked by otherworldly energies, the battle between Raditz and Lord Boros raged at its peak. In his meteor burst form, Boros slammed out assault after assault, each blow capable of raising mountains. Yet Raditz refused to be shaken. He didn't need to chase Boros's lightning-speed strikes. Instead, he funneled every scrap of his ki into an impenetrable defense. In the original legends, Raditz had once taken an attack powerful enough to obliterate the moon, emerged unscathed, and sneered, "Is that the best you can do?" Now, as Boros's torrent of energy collapsed fruitlessly against Raditz's guard, frustration twisted the conqueror's face. His usual arrogance gave way to raw fury. There was only one way left forward. With a roar that split the air, Boros gathered all his remaining ki into a single, devastating release. His ultimate, apocalyptic awe, the Nirvana Cannon. He let the blast fly, determined to shatter Raditz's defenses and end the fight once and for all. With a thunderous roar that seemed to rend the stars themselves, Boros unleashed his ultimate technique, the star-shattering roaring cannon. He drew every scrap of energy into his core, then expelled it in one cataclysmic blast from his mouth. As the titanic power swirled around him, his very form began to transform. The familiar pink and white of his skin deepened to an unfathomable black, like the furthest reaches of space. The dark stripes that once served merely as decoration now blazed with golden light, as if each marked line were a light with its own constellation. They snaked along his limbs and converged in his single cyclopean eye. Within that eye, the usual black and white reversal snapped back. A brilliant golden pupil burned against jet-black sclera, projecting an aura of unstoppable authority and cold resolve. For a moment, Boros wondered, "Is this truly my limit?" He dismissed the thought as quickly as it came. There was no turning back, no half measures. He would either crush Raditz utterly or be sundered himself. Either way, he would show his foe the meaning of true despair. He inhaled deeply, feeling the surge of the cosmos align with his will. Every particle of the universe seemed to press into him, lending its power to his final, fateful assault. Boros swept his head back and let out an earth-shaking roar. "I'll destroy you, and this planet's surface, together," he thundered. In an instant, a horrifying torrent of black and white energy swirled inside his gaping maw. Then, with the force of a wild stallion unleashed, the beam erupted. At birth, it was scarcely a foot across, but it swelled with astonishing speed. By the time it had streamed 10 meters from Boros, its diameter had ballooned to 30 meters, and it still climbed. Within that ever-expanding column, the dark and light energies churned violently. Wherever they collided, brilliant prismatic flashes bloomed, stunning as a rainbow, yet laced with lethal intent. As the beam carved its path, reality itself warped. The very air cracked open with jagged fissures, buildings trembled to their foundations, and a crushing pressure radiated outward, bending steel and tearing stone. Yet standing at the heart of this cataclysm was Raditz, unshaken. He met the onrushing horror with a disdainful smirk, as if the fate of worlds were nothing more than an annoyance he could swat aside. Ethan arched an eyebrow and smirked. "Is that really all you've got?" he thought, calmly lifting his right hand to face the incoming obliterating beam. Concentrating every ounce of his ki, he molded the energy in his body into a brilliant, volatile sphere. "Take this, Boros. Feel the true power of a Saiyan." With a fierce shout, Ethan flung the glowing orb directly into the path of the onrushing beam. The instant they collided, a titanic roar shattered the air. Black and white light exploded against the dazzling core of Ethan's gas bomb, sending shockwaves tearing through rock, trees, and even the atmosphere itself. The very ground trembled beneath their clash, and for a moment it seemed as if the sky might split in two. Yet despite the fury of Boros's attack, Ethan's explosive sphere gradually asserted its dominance, its radiance pressing the beam back, and inch by inch it began to overwhelm the assault. Ethan's air projectile shrugged off Boros's energy beam and surged forward with savage force, cleaving the air like a reef splitting a raging river. It closed in on Boros before he could blink. "Let's see just how far apart we really are," Boros bellowed, pouring the last of his strength into a colossal beam of light. Yet even that desperate blast flickered and died against Ethan's relentless strike. Boros barely had time to register defeat before Ethan's attack hit home. A titanic explosion of energy consumed him in an instant. As a scion capable of tearing planets apart, Ethan's assault was utterly unstoppable. Had Boros tried to outmaneuver him, he might have tied Ethan up long enough to find an opening, but Ethan deliberately chose a head-on clash. Against the ferocity of the scions, no other race stands a chance. Boros's defeat was sealed the moment he faced Ethan's unyielding onslaught. The blast didn't just obliterate Boros's body, it twisted the surrounding space itself, sending ripples through the fabric of reality. Those ripples radiated outward in perfect circles, racing all the way to the borders of the planet known as the Ninja World. Boros's assault proved powerless against Raditz's gas bomb. In an instant, the device went critical and detonated in a cataclysmic blast. The surface of Ninja World trembled as though gripped by invisible hands. Mountain peaks crumbled, rivers carved new courses through the valleys, and great clouds of dust and debris roared skyward, forging a mushroom cloud that blotted out the heavens. Towering ancient trees, once guardians of the forest, snapped like brittle twigs, then disintegrated into ash and sawdust, drifting on the wind. The towns and villages that had thrived across the land were reduced to rubble in seconds, leaving only stunned silence and the lingering taste of despair. Yet the devastation did not stop at ground level. The explosion's shock wave shoved upward with breathtaking speed, tearing through the planet's dense cloud cover and hammering its upper atmosphere. This pulse of energy raced outward at near light speed, enveloping every corner of Ninja World in an unstoppable tide of destruction. Under the force's impact, the once pure, leisurely clouds vanished in an instant, leaving no trace as if they'd never existed. Chapter 961, The Tainted World's Rebirth of Uchiha Madara. Madara Uchiha. The sky cleared of its cloud cover, unveiling an unsettling calm that spoke of imminent danger. Almost at once, a strange energy began to eat away at the planet's atmosphere. What had once served as an impenetrable shield now trembled under the onslaught. The energy wave moved like a razor blade, slicing through gas molecules and shattering the air's once stable structure. As the atmosphere ballooned outward, pulled by unseen forces, it stretched to its breaking point. With a final, earth-shaking crack, a gaping wound tore open in the sky, a scar across the heavens. The Ninja World had lost a portion of its protective layer, and through that breach, deadly radiation and cosmic dust poured in, inflicting irreversible harm on the planet's delicate ecosystem. Temperatures on the surface plunged, day and night swinging to extremes the world had never known. Crops withered beneath the biting cold, and wildlife faltered in the face of sudden, brutal winters. In the span of moments, the planet teetered on the brink of ecological collapse, all heralded by the rebirth of Uchiha Madara's impure power. The once orderly airflow around the ninja planet collapsed into violent turbulence, spawning colossal storms and raging hurricanes. These tempests didn't merely ravage the planet's surface, they tore upward into the void, churning the surrounding space itself. Even distant star fields felt their pull, as trajectories of nearby celestial bodies wavered under the storm's might. With the atmosphere shredded, the planet's seething interior began to vent unchecked. Superheated gases, molten lava, and jagged rock fragments shot out in titanic jets, blazing across the cosmos like infernal volcanoes. The resulting meteor showers, brilliant but lethal, swept outward in all directions, threatening not only the ninja world, but any neighboring worlds caught in their path. Watching from afar, Uchiha Obito's eyes widened in horror at the devastation wrought by Raditz's air bomb assault. Even with his divine chakra, he dared not stand his ground. He teleported thousands of miles away in a heartbeat. "Impossible," he whispered to himself, his voice trembling. "How can any being be this terrifying?" His spirit trembled with awe and dread, and across the ninja realm, every living thing felt the same overwhelming, majestic power surging through the void. Across the three sacred realms, from the Pure Land where sage Hagoromo Otsutsuki resided, to the moon-bound consciousness of Hamura Otsutsuki, and even among the distant Otsutsuki like Ishiki, every divine presence stood enthralled as a blinding aurora tore the sky apart. In that moment, all life felt its insignificance beneath such overwhelming celestial might. Even Black Zetsu writhed in agony, unable to endure the radiant force descending from above. Far below, in a damp, torchlit chamber hidden beneath the earth, Orochimaru watched the heavens' disturbance with fevered anticipation. Candlelight danced across his pale features, accentuating the eagerness and something darker in his hollow eyes. The laboratory's walls were lined with arcane instruments and tattered scrolls, and a pungent haze of rare herbs and unknown chemicals clung to the air, hinting at the transgressive experiments conducted within. Tension crackled through the room like an electric current, the very atmosphere pregnant with latent power. Orochimaru rose from his seat with deliberate slowness, lifting a single test tube into the wavering glow. Inside, blood, the color of liquid night, pulsed with a life of its own. Uchiha Madara's blood, brimming with untold strength and inexhaustible potential. A slow, knowing smile curled at Orochimaru's lips, as though he could already glimpse the triumph to come. "Black Zetsu, you've presented me with an offer I simply can't refuse. Imagine Madara Uchiha, once the very name that struck fear into every shinobi, reborn to walk this world again. What a sight that would be." Black Zetsu's voice emerged from the shadows, calm and reassured. "There's no time to waste. An unprecedented force now threatens the balance of our world. Unless we combine our strengths, our plan will fail, and our enemies will grow too powerful to confront. The power we're about to seize is the only weapon capable of standing against what's coming." "Then let us begin the grand ceremony," Orochimaru purred, his tongue flicking out to moisten his dry lips. His eyes glinted with ravenous anticipation. "Madara's power is immeasurable, yes, but mere resurrection won't unleash his full might. That's why I selected the White Zetsu as our sacrifice. Their life essence is extraordinarily resilient and intrinsically connected to this realm. Using them will ensure the reincarnation proceeds with minimal loss." Black Zetsu inclined his head. The chamber fell silent as the two conspirators took their places before a circle of ancient seals. Flickering torchlight danced across walls carved with forbidden runes, heralding the dawn of a new epoch, one in which Madara Uchiha would once again cast his shadow across the ninja world. Ethan waved his hand in a fluid motion, and two shadowy figures shimmered into being before him. At first, they looked like formless black shapes, but as they solidified, it became clear they were White Zetsu clones, innocent plant-like beings blinking in confusion. One of them glanced around, alarmed. "Black Zetsu, what's going on? Why have we been summoned here?" Black Zetsu met their gaze without a word, his expression unreadable, as though these two were nothing more than expendable pawns. Then, without breaking his stare, he turned to Orochimaru and said, "They're yours now." A cruel smile spread across Orochimaru's lips. His eyes gleamed with anticipation. "Don't worry," he purred. "I'll make very good use of you." In a blur of hand seals, streams of glowing sealing script shot from his fingertips. The runes wrapped around the two White Zetsu like iron bands, rooting them to the spot. Orochimaru seized one of the bound clones by the arm and led them into a hidden chamber. Inside, the air crackled with arcane energy. Shelves of scrolls and bizarre instruments lined the walls, and on the floor lay a vast, intricate pattern etched in phosphorescent runes. The design writhed like a living thing, its pale light cutting through the surrounding darkness. This was the heart of Orochimaru's secret impure world reincarnation ritual. Years of research have gone into these rituals, each inscription a testament to Orochimaru's profound mastery of life and death. At the very heart of the chamber stands White Zetsu, the unnatural offspring of Hashirama's cells. Its face is a mask of terror and despair, its body trembling under invisible bonds it cannot break. Immortality reincarnation technique. Orochimaru's voice rings out, low, powerful, and full of purpose. He clasps his hands, and chakra bursts from him like a tidal wave, infusing the ritual glyphs carved into the floor. Instantly, the sealed chamber hums with raw energy. The air grows thick and oppressive. From the darkness, Black Zetsu watches in silence, its alien eyes gleaming with anticipation. It knows that this moment will alter the course of the ninja world, paving the way for Uchiha Madara's return, the man destined to reshape history. As the ceremony reaches its climax, a primal force stirs from deep beneath the ground. It was as if ravenous tendrils were slipping through the barriers of the Yang realm, reaching out into the distant Pure Land, an unreachable domain where countless souls lay in eternal slumber. Among them lay Uchiha Madara, the fearsome shinobi whose power once shook the ninja world to its core. As the ritual deepened, endless shards of pure chakra rose from its epicenter. Each fragment crackled with a devastatingly corrosive force and drifted outward in a ghostly dance. Gradually, they swirled around White Zetsu, coating his form in a chilling, otherworldly glow. Baijue's screams echoed through the hidden chamber, but they failed to stop the tide of corruption. His body twisted and contorted in unbearable agony until he lost all trace of his former self, reborn into something entirely new. When the last shards of energy finally dispersed, a man appeared before them. Jet black hair, clad in cracked Warring States armor. He kept his eyes shut, yet the sheer power radiating from his bones made the air itself tremble. At that moment, the legendary Uchiha Madara had returned to the world of the living. Opening his eyes, he surveyed the scene and spoke, "Not bad at all. Nagato has proven himself worthy. He accomplished the task perfectly." Madara's praise was for the boy who had once wielded Madara's own eyes. In his memory, Nagato had evolved from a mere youth into a formidable shinobi capable of the reanimation jutsu, a forbidden art that restored to Madara the life robbed by old age, allowing him to step once more into a realm defined by endless warfare and the delicate balance between life and death. When Madara opened his eyes and took in the two figures before him, an unreadable expression crossed his face. "Heijue," he said quietly, "your arrival at this moment surpasses even my wildest expectations." Slowly, Uchiha Madara lowered the hand he had raised in preparation for battle. His cold, all-seeing gaze fixed solely on the illusory form of Black Zetsu, as though nothing else in the world mattered. Not even Orochimaru, who was desperately struggling with the earth reincarnation technique in the filthy ground before him. Beads of sweat trickled down Orochimaru's forehead. He felt as if he were standing on the brink of a raging river of history. One misstep now could mean his absolute demise. Clenching his teeth, he redoubled his focus on the hand seals, pouring every ounce of refined chakra into reinforcing the binding technique that held Madara in check. Yet even Orochimaru, the prodigious genius whose name inspired both awe and fear, could only watch in helpless frustration before a being of Madara's caliber. "Madara-sama," Heijue's voice rang out, echoing in the charged silence. There was a subtle edge of desperation beneath his measured tone, but also a steel-hard resolve. "Please, allow me to explain. The transformations sweeping the ninja world right now exceed anything you could possibly imagine. Time's passage hasn't merely reshaped this world, it's also given rise to new powers and ambitions. The reason I chose to rouse you in this manner is because decades may stretch long for mortals," Madara Uchiha interrupted, his voice cool and distant, "but for me, they flutter by in the blink of an eye." Though his tone betrayed an almost supernatural detachment, the barely concealed annoyance in his expression spoke volumes. "What kind of changes are you referring to? The world feels so unfamiliar now that even my most carefully laid plans have gone awry." Madara's brow creased as a storm of conflicting emotions flickered across his eyes. He knew that Heijue, the clone of his will, acted as an extension of his own decisions. Yet the shock of this unexpected resurrection still left him unsettled. He paused, weighing his thoughts in silence, then smoothed his features into a measured calm. "Very well," he murmured. "If you were the one who did this, I won't protest. But what about Obito? Why hasn't he come to see me in person?" His words dripped with displeasure, masking a deeper desire to maintain control over every unfolding event. Obito, he has his own reasons, Heijue admitted, his voice betraying a flicker of hesitation, as though he were concealing some crucial detail. Rest assured, my lord, your will shall be carried out, and the ninja world will be reshaped once more. Orochimaru stood to the side, silent but agitated. He was no longer merely a performer in this drama. He had become a witness to history in the making, and to its uncertain future. He held the sealing formation with iron resolve, wary that any slip in concentration might allow Madara's overwhelming power to break free and annihilate everything. Yet beneath his caution burned a fierce curiosity about every exchange between Madara and Black Zetsu. Each word they spoke felt like a key, unlocking an entirely new realm of possibility. After a long pause, Madara finally tore his gaze away from Black Zetsu and fixed it on Orochimaru. The icy reserve that always accompanied his voice had thawed into something almost resembling grudging respect. Orochimaru, he said, you truly are a genius. To have taken Tobirama's forbidden technique and refined it so far, few could manage that. But tell me, what is your goal in all this? Is your ambition nothing more than satisfying your curiosity? Orochimaru allowed himself a slow, confident smile, cunning glinting in his eyes. Curiosity is only the beginning, he replied. My true purpose reaches far beyond simple knowledge. Orochimaru's pale eyes gleamed with anticipation as he crouched before the great Uchiha. Lord Madara, he began, his voice low and earnest, my quest for power has never wavered. You and the age you shaped are among the greatest treasures I've studied. I want to know what forged your strength, why you chose the path you did, and how you rose to such heights. Madara offered a derisive snort. You really think your jutsu can bind me? A child's plaything of seals and threads. With a thought, the constricting symbols around his wrists and ankles unraveled like mist in the wind. Undeterred, Orochimaru pressed on. My pursuit of ninjutsu springs from a deeper curiosity, the essence of life itself. You once proclaimed that power alone can reshape the world, but I contend that knowledge and wisdom are just as vital. Imagine if we combined our insights. Together, we might unlock truths no one else could even fathom, and forge a world where power and wisdom walk hand in hand. For a heartbeat, Madara's cold gaze flickered. He leaned forward, as if savoring the serpent's words. Intriguing, he murmured. You flatter yourself with grand ideas, but there remains an unbridgeable gulf between us. Still, your ambition amuses me. Very well. Speak your truths, Orochimaru, and let us see if your wisdom can match your daring. Madara's crimson eyes flickered with cold amusement as he leaned back on the black iron throne. If you truly bring me news worthy of my time, he said slowly, I might deign to share some of the secrets I possess. But frankly, none of that matters anymore. I've been resurrected, and from this moment on, I will walk my own path. He turned his gaze to Black Zetsu, whose ant-like features quivered under that chilling stare. Now tell me, Madara continued, voice low and measured, what calamity has befallen the shinobi world that you'd resort to such a crude reincarnation? Why return me to life in this wretched form? Black Zetsu bowed his head, gathering courage. The situation, Madara-sama, is far more complicated than you can imagine. You must steel yourself for the truth. After a tense pause, Zetsu spoke. First, there is a new power in our world, one called Virgil. He struck out alone, defeated every shinobi of Konoha, and laid waste to the remnants of the Akatsuki without breaking a sweat. Madara arched a single brow. A formidable foe, then, and yet you sound as if that is merely an afterthought. Zetsu's voice dropped to a hushed tremor. It is, because what comes next is beyond any shinobi's reckoning. Warriors from another world, beings not born of Earth, have already crossed into our realm. They invade with technologies and abilities we cannot yet fathom. Madara's pupils constricted into pinpoints, the Sharingan's tomoe glowing in his eyes. Aliens, he whispered, as if tasting the word aloud for the first time. He had anticipated wars between nations, rebellions within the villages, even clashes among the gods themselves. But never this. Silence fell. In that haunted hush, an ancient dictator, reborn in a mortal shell, realized that his greatest challenge had only just begun. I'd be happy to help. Could you please share the full text of the chapter you'd like me to rewrite? Once I have the entire passage, I'll revise it into smooth, idiomatic English, rename Luther as Ethan, and ensure all characters and plot points remain intact.